mean, that would be expense associated with that.
Okay, I've got my speaker off. So the microphone is not working.
Bringing sand and could be good.
We are recording.
And then there's things you can do in between, you know.
Can you hear us on the,
So that's what we're.
Dan, the meeting's starting.
I'm gonna talk about the.
You can hear us okay, John?
The other interesting thing to keep in mind is that the 1948 authorization, federal authorization, they did. Running, all right, then you have to.
Say something scathing like.
All right, team.
Yes.
We're gonna learn about lots of good stuff tonight. So everybody ready? Awesome. All right.
Call the meeting to order.
Yep. So would love to call the meeting to order. This is the regularly scheduled meeting for July 24th of the Midcoast Community Council. Do we have Kimberly? Yep. Kimberly, would you do the?
Greg,
Here.
Scott.
He's not here. He won't be here tonight.
Okay, Scott is absent. Dan,
Here.
Anne,
Here.
Claire,
Here.
Gus,
Here.
and Kimberly is here, but I am attending remotely under the Just Cause provisions of AB 2449 because of the caregiving needs of my parent. And I'm attending from a private room with a closed door, and there is no one in the house under 18 years of age.
Great. All right. So let's go ahead and start with the Board of Supervisors report. Marisol.
We check if everybody's hearing, audio's okay outside.
Harvey, can you hear us?
Yeah, fine.
Okay, good.
Right.
It's okay, Dan. COVID, leave the windows open.
Not all
I'm happy to have them open. It's hot.
We're not.
Please.
We're gonna have noise interruptions.
When it does, we'll deal with it.
Okay. Marisol, take it away.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Marisol here with Supervisor Mueller's office. So my updates for today are the following. The supervisor wanted me to share that he is exploring the possibility of a mobile ER unit with the San Mateo Medical Association. More details to follow. Let's see. The supervisor will bring. Oh, that was me. Okay. The supervisor will has looked into bringing adult changing tables, and we got an agreement with the county to do so. So for locations, I will follow up as we continue to make progress on this work. And the last point is, due to the governor's office budget cuts, our funding for the cable for the Yatos Tunnel was cut, but we're working with Senator Becker and Assembly Member Berman's office to restore the funding. Okay, so those are my updates for today. And just wanted to remind everybody that I will, moving forward at the MCC meetings, I will only be, for our new policy, I will only be here for 1 hour, but I will be continuing to listen to the rest of the meeting whenever I can. Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
For?
Yeah. Marisol, we really like you here, but honestly, you've got a lot to do. And if you want to just do your report online, we're okay with that.
Okay.
I'm happy with her saving her time
Yes.
for
Thank you.
travel so she can do
Yes.
other work for us.
Okay.
And what was the last statement you made? I'm sorry about that.
Due to the governor's office budget cuts, our funding for the cable from the Yantos Tunnel or Lantos?
Yeah.
Yantos.
What you're
Tunnel.
talking about is the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative, which we got
Yeah.
back on. I don't know if you remember this, a year ago, the letter that SU and Becker and Berman supported. We had it back on and now they're pulling it again.
So we are currently working with Senator Becker's office and Assembly Member Berman's office to see if we can restore this.
Okay.
Okay.
Awesome.
Could you repeat the first item?
We're exploring the possibility of a mobile ER unit with the San Mateo Medical Association.
What does that mean?
I'm not the one working on this project right now, so I'll have more details to come as we make more progress. I have to come back with more details.
You know, this is what I was concerned about before, that announcements get made of things that nobody knows what they're talking about. I mean, we don't know, you guys know, but we don't know. And then misunderstandings happen and I would just rather you kind of didn't even tell us if we don't know what's happening.
Okay. The only response I'll have to that, Claire, respectfully, is that sometimes these are just announcements that we want you to know about so that way, as we make more progress, it doesn't just come as a total surprise.
Well,
Right?
that's true. That's a good
Yes.
point.
Yeah.
On the other hand, what is a mobile emergency unit? I've never heard of such a thing. And what is the San Mateo Medical Association? Is that what you're talking about?
I will take those questions back to the office and get those answers for you.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Assume it's something like the stroke mobile,
Well, we can assume, but
but okay, I don't know, but I know that there is on the peninsula, there's a stroke mobile that can respond to strokes.
Okay.
And they have a CT scan inside and they're able to, they've saved many, many lives with it. So I don't know what they would have in this unit, but I'm assuming, my assumption has nothing to do with anybody else,
Sure.
but my assumption is maybe they're looking at something similar.
But that's exactly what happens when we get these little half informations, is that everybody thinks they heard something and everybody heard something different. And the original intent was something totally different. So you'll find out for us.
Thank
And
you.
And I mean, here's the other thing, right? When you're getting these announcements, at least I'm also getting some questions from you. So I think, frankly, it's less of a surprise to you if I bring it up at least now rather than waiting till later, right?
Well, right now, we're still kind of trying to
And-
deal with the urgent care.
Maybe
And-
if it was expressed like, here's something coming up and there will be more details following, something like that. So it's a notice ahead, but it's everybody acknowledge it's not complete and we're expecting more details to follow.
But I don't even
Okay.
know what it is. And I don't know what the San Mateo Medical Association is. Is that like the AMA branch in the county or what? We don't know.
Yeah,
Okay.
I will come back with those answers,
Okay.
as soon as I can. So
Thank you.
I'll try to send you guys an
Sorry to
email.
take it by your like.
No, not at all. I mean, questions are good, providers for feedback. So I appreciate the questions. Anything else?
San
Thank you.
Mateo Medical Center is listed under San Mateo County Health.
Okay, that's how you said that. Send the association.
San Mateo Medical Association, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Because I would assume it's.
But I will clarify. I'll clarify via email.
Thank you.
Okay. But yes, I think overall it is important to, have the communication as to what we are working on. So that way you don't get the last piece of news at the last minute,
I do have one more question, please.
Yes.
I saw that there was something that was supposed to be, which unfortunately I missed, an emergency Board of Supervisors meeting or it came up on Monday and there was something about, it has to do with, let's see if I get this right, Article 34 of the California Constitution, and it has to do with affordable housing that's funded with public dollars is supposed to have an election. You're supposed to decide whether or not that is the case according to Article 34, but the Board of Supervisors are taking up a matter that allows them to avoid that, something to that effect.
Okay, we did have that meeting take place. The supervisor has not decided on that vote yet, so I can provide more information via email when I check in to see if he's going to provide an answer.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
because the only thing I saw in a newspaper article that it was put off for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And it was coming up.
Yeah, it's going to come up again.
Could you give us a little thumbnail description of the issue?
I think I'd rather wait until we come back with.
I can. If you will take my citizen opinion. So there's an article 34, section 34 of the California Constitution. It says that cities have to vote to approve affordable housing developments in their area. This came up in Millbrae with the La Quinta Hotel, which has been a big controversy. somehow at the last minute on Friday, Mike Cal decided to put forward a special meeting on Monday to put on the ballot in November, change to our county's rules, which would create some kind of a warehouse to put in it a bank of affordable housing projects that would be approved regardless of what the cities would say. Apparently, nobody talked to the cities about this. And so it's very disenfranchising for the cities
Yes.
to find that their constitutional rights are going to be disenfranchised under the last minute. And of course, the affordable housing thing has been a point of controversy for some time. So I'm happy to see that the supervisors have deferred it for 2 weeks. I think that Dave Canepa also made the point, it would really be nice to hear what the cities think about this. So we'll see.
Yeah, so that's going to be continued until a couple of weeks later. And by then, I think I'll be back. So by our next meeting with more information. Does that? Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does
Harvey.
everybody, yeah,
You have Harvey.
Oh, pardon?
well, yeah, I was gonna say, is there
You don't have
anybody,
to stay. No,
is there anybody on the Zoom who has questions for?
For Marisol.
Okay, no, great, then Harvey, you're up.
Okay, I apologize that I missed the last two meetings. I had other city business going on. I heard that there are a lot of groupies that miss me, so I will be here as much as I can in the future. Sorry. At the last city council meeting, we passed the streetscape master plan. That's the idea of reworking Main Street from Highway 1 North to Highway 1 South. It's a conceptual design at this point. It's gone through an incredible amount of vetting, all kinds of citizen meetings. So the plan is online. You can look at it. It's not anything that's funded yet. It might take many years to actually implement everything, but we're going to start on it as soon as we possibly can, and we're going to try to get funding for it. The other thing that might be relevant was that the city council has decided to put on the November ballot a half-cent sales tax increase that will increase the revenue that Half Moon Bay has. Right now, we're facing a $4 million structural deficit. And if this passes, that would produce about $2 million to help the city. The last item on my list is we've had a horrible vandalism incident at the Pride Center on Main Street. A 14-year-old boy was arrested for doing it. And the DA is considering hate crime charges because this is the third incident that's happened at the Pride Center in the last year, and it's really very disconcerting. But the community has rallied together, and citizens got the kid apprehended because they saw what was going on. That's all I got, but I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Anybody have questions for Harvey? Yeah, Anne,
Oh.
and then Anne, and then Dan.
Can you tell us what happened with the vandalism? Is there damage to the building, was anyone injured or?
No one was injured. No one was at the Pride Center at the time. The kid took the flag down and destroyed it. That was the main damage that was done.
Thank you.
Sure.
Dan?
Yeah, thank you for your report, Harvey. In regards to the Main streetscapes plan, I'm certain that the overall incredible loss of parking for the businesses on Main Street and for the visitors to access the businesses, I'm certain that there must have been some pretty thorough conversations on the loss of the parking and also the resulting effect on the flow of traffic, really slowing down the flow of traffic through Main Street. So I was just, can you share with us some thoughts that the council has on, why is it necessary to slow down the flow on Main Street when it's so important? And also, why is it necessary to remove so many parking spaces?
I'm not an expert at what the rest of the council thinks, but what Dan is referring to is on Heritage Main Street, the 4 blocks between the bridge and Correa Street. The streetscapes plan calls for much wider sidewalks, no curbs, and the parking will change from angle parking to parallel parking. And as Dan mentioned, that will reduce the number of spaces available directly on Main Street. On the other hand, the idea is that the perpendicular streets, like Correas and then Johnston Street, will change to have angle parking from parallel parking. That should more or less be a wash in terms of the number of parking spaces available. It will mean that people will have to walk half a block to go to Main Street businesses. But we thought, both in terms of safety, if you've ever tried to navigate down Main Street and you got a big truck that obscures the view, and it's really a safety issue in terms of blocking the view of the street. So all told, the idea was that this would enhance the walkability of Main Street, make it more accessible, more desirable, because it should be a nicer looking street. That's the idea. So yeah, there'll be slightly fewer parking spaces on Main Street, but that will be compensated. I hope that answers the question.
Planter boxes in some of these parking spaces, correct, to be taking even more parking, is that correct? So is that, I was told this is true. They can put planters in the street where a car would park?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay,
you may be right, but I'm not aware of that.
Okay, so you're addressing, I'm not saying I really agree with it, but there was some type of thought, at least mitigation on the loss of parking. But what you do not respond to is the impact of the flow. If you have parallel parking and got somebody, there's no parking spaces, so now it's a hot item. People will now double park and wait for somebody half a block away with their keys out, essentially putting a stop to the flow of Main Street. And of course, when the person eventually does parallel park, not everybody is highly skilled at parallel parking, so there's maybe 2 or 3 passes also preventing cars from flowing on Main Street. As much thought been put into this concern?
The idea of slowing traffic on Main Street is a desirable one, if you ask me. Again, for safety reasons. And there's been a lot of potential collisions between bicycles and cars on Main Street. So I'm not against, personally, anything that slows traffic, and double parking could exist right now. I don't know if the streetscapes plan really changes that.
Okay, so yeah, certainly safe vehicle speed is important. I think, well, I guess I'm concerned that the result you're gonna kind of force gridlock, and there's only 2 ways. There's Main Street and then there's Highway 1. They're both used kind of interchangeable for different people, depending on where you're going and where you're starting from. But they both provide a flow. However, you slow down Main Street, you're going to cause more problems on Highway 1. Just some food for thought moving forward. I'm sure I'll be part of the meetings on this future. Thank you.
Sure.
Awesome. I see Crystalline with her hand raised. Are you, do you want to jump in here on this thing we've just been talking about, Crystalline?
Yes, if you wouldn't mind, I would just like to note that there has been a lot of thought that has gone into the changes into the parking. Some people may or may not remember that Main Street was parallel parking for a long time. And just even this Monday, we had a car that was nearly total. I mean, the front end of that car is gone because of the unsafe parking conditions that's by the parallel or by the diagonal parking. It's been floated around that hopefully we'll at least be able to request that signage go up so that no ranch trucks park on there. That is a big problem. But there was, I think, roughly 65 hours worth of meetings where we talked about parking extensively. And so that's been taken under account quite a bit. And to Harvey's point, safety is the utmost first priority. And currently the way Main Street is structured with the parking, it is absolutely as unsafe as it could possibly be.
I've been here 35 years and I've yet to, I'm not there 24/7, but I've yet to experience or witness any issues on Main Street.
I am on Main Street every single day for 8 hours a day. And I can guarantee you, I have almost been sideswiped at least once a week. And yesterday, just yesterday, I had someone almost run me over.
Yeah, I guess that could happen anywhere.
Well, no place is
Yep. Sounds like nothing's perfect, but it sounds like there's been a lot of thought that goes into it. Sid, do you have a question for Harvey?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Harvey, two things. One is for about the Gay Pride building. The 14-year-old that they caught, was that because they had installed video cameras?
They have video cameras, but he was caught because there were people nearby who saw him.
They caught him in the act.
Alerted the sheriffs then. Yeah.
So I just wondered if they had, caught him on surveillance and known that he had done it before, because they had previous incidents. So that was my question. And then regarding the parking, has Half Moon Bay considered a municipal parking garage? Because you may be, you haven't funded any of these parking solutions you're thinking about for Main Street, but the big ugly thing in the room is the 555 Kelly parking deficit with the 40 units in the 17 parking places. And that's going to create a downtown parking issue. So been any talk of having some kind of parking for parking? So there's there's people that gotta come down to Main Street. They want downtown, their place there. That at all?
You're starting to break up, Sid, but I got the gist of what you're asking. And the council is well aware that we really do need a comprehensive parking plan. Unfortunately, one way or another, it's going to cost a lot of money. And as you know, we don't have the money right now. What we certainly think that when we can fund a garage, I think that makes a lot of sense. And as I think I said at the last meeting, there is another short-term solution, and that is if the Catholic Church, which is 2 doors down from 555 Kelly, were to allow a 2-story parking garage on their facility. which has been mentioned in the conditions of approval for 555 Kelly, that would alleviate some of the near-term issues with parking. Unfortunately, they've been very.
What about
Say that again? What about what? I didn't
what
hear
about
that.
Shoreline Station? How about Shoreline Station? Could you not put a parking structure right there on their property? Where the parking lot is on Shoreline?
If the owners of the development agreed to it, that might be a possibility. I hadn't heard about that. As I said, we're aware that there's a problem. We just don't have
Yeah.
a solution right now, but there's certainly, it's clear that one way or another, we're going to need more parking spaces in the downtown area.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, doke. Thank you.
Sure.
Do you have a question for Harvey?
Yeah, I just have a quick comment. I actually think it's a good thing that you're going to delay a little bit about this, because my concern is, and it always has been, the safety of the children on Kelly Avenue. And I have thought, once the Planning Commission finishes their work, seeing what, I mean, the kids over there at Cunha, they're not paying attention very much and stuff. So I think some extra safety will go in there. But then I thought, okay, my way in then will be Main Street. But then when I saw the plan, I thought, well, how hard is it going to be to get, because the northern end of Main Street is the one that's slated to be more of a plaza. So I guess my question is, my comment is, I think it's a good thing that there's a bit of delay so you can see, how things work out on Kelly, but also just if there's any plans to look at both of those traffic flows together. Thank you.
There has been a traffic study that was required. I'm not a big fan of traffic studies. I don't think they really mean a hell of a lot, frankly. It's obvious that there's going to be need for more parking. I think anybody who looks at what's going on will agree with that. I wish I had a solution. As I said, there is a near-term solution, but the Catholic Church won't go along.
Okay, Crystal, I see your hand is still up. Do you have another thing you want to say? No? Okay, great.
Bless you.
Thank you, Harvey.
You're
Always great
welcome.
to have.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Awesome. Then moving on to public comments. Do we have anyone in the public who wants to make a comment on something not on the agenda? Anyone? Going once? Going twice? Awesome. Great. Moving right along. Love it. All right. We have the consent agenda, which is the minutes from June 12th and July 10th. Does anybody want to pull either one of those things? No? Yep.
I'm going to make a motion to approve the minutes
Fantastic. Is there a
of
second?
a
Second.
consent agenda.
Great. Moved and seconded. Kimberly, will you do the roll?
Yes, just a minute. I'm a little confused because I don't think there were any minutes posted, were there?
Oh, didn't we do that? No? Oh,
I didn't get any. Did I,
Okay,
Kimberly?
sorry.
Did I miss anything?
I thought we were gonna have them. My
No,
bad.
it's my fault and I apologize. I actually do have the minutes for the 12th, but I didn't get them to you in time.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Cancel
so
that vote.
Cancel that.
Okay.
Okay. I will look forward to it for next time. All right. Well, then on we go to the regular agenda. So first up is shoreline erosion. So we have Bob Battaglio. And Kimberly, do you want to introduce Bob?
Sure, yes. I'd like to welcome Bob tonight and thank him for coming out to an MCC meeting and showing up in person. Bob is going to give us a presentation on coastal erosion and particularly with around issues related to the unincorporated coast side. He's an engineer with many years' experience in coastal issues and coastal geology. Much of his experience is in San Mateo County. So I think he can share his knowledge and wisdom with us tonight, and he's very open to questions and discussion. So thank you, Bob, and I'll let you tell us more about yourself because I know you have a slide that talks about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Kimberly. Is this on?
We hope so.
Is it working? Is that loud?
Yes,
Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay, great. So I think I'm going to be presenter.
You are.
I am.
Now, if you want to share a screen?
I will
should be able
share
to
the
do that.
screen.
One thing to keep in mind with the mic is they're kind of directional, so as long as you're talking straight into it, it should be. If you turn your head the other way, it may not pick it up as well.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so hopefully everyone can hear me and hopefully you can see my screen, although I don't see it.
Yeah. Nope. Share screen. Let me try to get it.
There it comes. Yep, no, I got it. Okay. Let me see if I can make this a presentation. There's a little delay, I see.
We had a fragment of it once before.
Oh, no.
There it is.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you, council members, for inviting me to speak. I really appreciate it. I'm going to talk about Surfers Beach and Miramar coastal adaptation ideas. I haven't solved the problem, but I'm happy to speak about it. My name again is Bob Vitalio, and I will get going. I've got a lot of slides. So here's my outline to the presentation. First, I have an introduction for myself that I'll just spend a minute on so you know who I am. Secondly, I'm going to frame the problem that Murata Road, Miramar neighborhood, and Surfers Beach, etc., are experiencing. And then I'm going to go into potential solutions under the near term, intermediate, and long term, and then discussion. This is the fourth presentation I've given on this topic over the last 20 years, I think it is. So I'm trying to do something a little different this time, and hopefully I've updated it a bit, although I don't know everything, obviously, so jump in. But when I get into potential solutions, I'm going to be walking through the way you might walk through an adaptation plan. There's going to be elements of it, so it's got like an echo or harmonic on my presentation. And then the discussion, I have a lot of slides that are very thematic, like, you know, different things you could do, very specific things that you, individual things. And if you want, we can spend time on one or more of those. I don't think I can go through all of them in detail.
Excuse me, Bob. On Zoom, there's a little black thing on top of the white part of your outline. It says participant is able to close captioning. Who can see this transcript? Can you get rid of that? I don't know if I'm the only one that can see it, but
I think I may have, but I'm not sure.
It's still there now?
yeah.
It was.
I don't see it on my screen, Sid, so I think it
don't
might
see it
be on.
So it might be what she was saying.
Yeah, but there was also the pre-recorded thing. Click OK.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see it.
I'm the only one that sees it. Okay, I'll try to get rid of it myself. I don't know how, but thank you. Sorry.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry. It took me a while to get this going on my end. So with that, I'll go to the next slide. There we go. Oops.
Yeah, I love that. Who is this?
Okay, so that's a picture of me paddling out at Mavericks a long time ago. So in the middle of the screen, let's see if I can get the cursor to work here. There it is. So I'm a professional civil engineer. I am still licensed in 6 states, California, Oregon, Washington, Louisiana, Alabama, and Florida. I've practiced for 40 years. My coastal processes training is from UC Berkeley. I graduated from a Master's of Engineering in 1985. I just retired from Environmental Science Associates in April of 2024. towards the top here, I am available to consult. I just set up a little company called Coastal Futures out of Pacifica. And I'm happy to talk to people if they're interested. And on the bottom, I talk about some of my surfing background, which perhaps is important. I think it is in terms of understanding coastal processes. It's been helpful to me anyway. So secondly, framing the problem. This is a picture of waves hitting the revetment and splashing up on Marauder Road. I borrowed this from a presentation by Ketchum, who I think you all know well. I really like her documents. So first of all, the harbor construction caused erosion. I think that's an accepted consensus fact. I'm showing here the picture of the breakwater, of Northern Half Moon Bay before the breakwaters were constructed in 1960. And what you see is what we call a hook shape or logarithmic spiral equilibrium shoreline, which is something that forms between headlands, Pillar Point being one and Miramani's Point or headland being the other. And the waves refract and diffract around the headlands and reefs, and as they change their direction, they create a shore that is more or less parallel to their crests, and that's where the hook forms, and the bluffs erode and the beaches form with that shape, called a log spiral as shape. And then here is a diagram that was put together in the 1980s, actually, where the problem is pretty well defined. And it shows the breakwater and changes in the wave patterns. And the red arrow points to the erosion hotspot, if you will, which is migrated down towards Medeo Creek to encompass all of Marauder Road and then some. So why is it eroding? How does the breakwater cause that? Well, the breakwater and the harbor itself have two major drivers affecting erosion at Surfers Beach and Marauder Road. There's less sand available, and there's faster wave-driven sand transport. Those two things together cause the beach to erode. On the lower left, there's a diagram, a slide that I presented before that shows, for example, there are several creeks that drain into the northern part of Half Moon Bay, which is now largely encased by the breakwaters. And so sand delivered from those streams is trapped in the harbor. And if it was not trapped in the harbor, that sand would move to the south and probably, farther south out of the bay eventually, and it would certainly fill the erosion that we're seeing south of the harbor if the breakwaters weren't there. There's also sand transport that comes along Fitzgerald and across the Mavericks Reef past the headland, and then likely comes across the bay and reaches shore somewhere south of here and spreads out. Some of that sand actually goes straight across what we call the Lagoon Beach or Mavericks Beach and into the harbor, and it's trapped there as well. So that sand would be available to this area, and now it's not. Now on the right, we have wave reflection, and there's a Google photo here, and we can see waves coming in from, these would be west or northwest waves that have gone over the outer reefs and come in, and they're approaching shore. And then you can see these lines, sorry, this arrow's a little touchy, but you can see this, this line right here and another one here. Those are waves reflecting off the breakwater and approaching the beach from the northwest instead of straight on shore. So the waves moving from basically north to south there is an artificial situation that increases the longshore sand transport. So I was here a week ago, Monday, And I just took a couple of pictures. The waves were small, but it was very calm and a beautiful day. So I thought I'd show you pictures of this wave reflection. So this first picture, you can see white water, and it's coming up, you know, it's kind of at an angle so that it's peeling to the north. It's coming at an angle from the southwest. And then you can see this other crest of the wave here, which is reflected off the breakwater, and it's coming from the northwest. When I go to the next few pictures, I think this will be a little more clear. Okay, so this is a few seconds later. You can see the white water coming in from the southwest, and then the wave coming from the northwest. And then here you see the wave coming from the northwest, which is bigger than the wave coming from the southwest. And then here the wave is just breaking. So small day, but it's very glassy, so you can kind of see the process. So coastal erosion. So we talked about the harbor trapped sand. It increases sand transport. You have erosion. So what is the erosion? Well, before the breakwaters were constructed, the literature indicates that the beaches and the bluffs were eroding at about 1/4 of a foot per year, FPY. And so the waves occasionally kind of overtop the beach, and the wave run up hits the bluffs, and the bluffs erode, they release sand. The beach just migrates with the bluffs. So there's a natural slow erosion rate. Post-breakwater, 1961 to 2006, the bluffs eroded about 6.7 feet per year. The beaches narrowed and migrated. They did migrate with the bluff erosion, but they also narrowed. Now the armoring reduces bluff erosion, but the beaches are really narrow now and very seasonal. We have some beaches now, but in the winter, there's really not much often. And in the future, there's a lot more potential erosion. We don't know exactly when it's going to come because it requires bluffs to erode and that kind of thing. But if you removed all the armor, this yellow line is an approximation of where the erosion would occur, and that goes past Obispo and almost to where we are here. Not quite, we're a little further away. So erosion results in more flooding. And this is a picture again from Ketchen's presentation. Erosion reduces beach widths, which allow larger waves to break closer to shore, which results in wave splash and run up overtopping, manifest by high velocity wave action that floods and causes structural damage and is not safe for pedestrians and automobiles. Okay, well, I think oh no, there's one more problem slide. I'm sorry. I think I'm telling you things you already know, but I just wanted to get it on the record. So the other, our institutional framework is a little bit of a challenge for a number of reasons, but here in particular, there are multiple jurisdictions, and I'm just going to step through and show you all the different jurisdictions that are related to a solution, I think. First, we have federal breakwater and the Air Force on Pillar Point. We have the state Highway 1 and the state parks to the south. We have San Mateo County, this entity and the towns. We have the city of Half Moon Bay, which actually, as I understand it, their property goes north along the shore. Or their jurisdiction, I'm sorry. And then there's federal, the Harbor District, the Harbor District jurisdiction, the Granada Community Services, the Coastal Trail, California Coastal Commission, State Lands Coast Guard, and the Marine Sanctuary. So lots of people involved, and the problem and solutions aren't limited to any one of these entities. Oh yeah, one more slide. Sorry about sea level rise. One more slide on the problem. So this graph shows curves of sea level rise projections that the state of California has published. This graph I put together, there's years on the horizontal axis going from 2000 to 2100. And there's amount of sea level rise starting from 2000, the year 2000 is the zero on these projections. and it goes up in feet, and up here is 10 feet. So these dash lines are, the black one is the intermediate projection for, just came out 2024, and the blue dash line is the high projection that just came out in 2024. The solid lines are the 2018 projections. There's not too much difference between the 2018 and 24 curves. Anyway, these numbers 1, 2, 3, and 6 are the ranges of sea level rise that we can expect. 1 foot by 2050, 2 feet by 2070, 3 to 6 feet by 2100. Now, these are a little on the higher end of all the projections because the state is risk averse. So, and usually when you design something, you're a little conservative. If you're designing a beam, you want the beam to be able to hold more load than it needs to hold because of risk and others. So it's the same kind of idea. So this is a diagram that I sketched, and it's published. You can see the source on the bottom. It's from a manual that talks about future conditions and how you can modify FEMA maps to include sea level rise and erosion. But I'll try to get through this quickly. I think it's important though, even though it's a little tedious. So this upper diagram shows a beach with a wave breaking, and then the water turning into a sheet flow, or what we call wave run up. You know, you see the waves break and the water surges up like a sheet. And this is showing a natural beach. And so with sea level rise, we expect the wave run up to increase with just sea level rise. So if sea level rise goes up a foot, the wave run up will go up the same amount as the sea. But that's because the beach erodes and presumably can reform itself. But what happens is the shoreline moves quite a bit. It moves based on the overall slope of the surf profile on the beach. So what that means is if we have a slope as 1 on 30, then by 2050, we have 30 feet of shoreline migration. By 27, 60 feet, 2190 to 180 feet. It's probably going to be slower than that because there are things in the way, obviously, the highway and the bluffs. But all I did was take these sea level rise numbers and multiply them by 30. So this gives you a ballpark.
TWL, what does that stand for?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, total water level. And that's a engineering term, which is the ocean level plus the extent of the wave crest above the ocean level.
You mean storm surge?
It would include storm surge. So, but really it's the wave crest and or the wave run up after the wave breaks. So in the prior picture, when we showed water splashing up on Marana Road, the total water level is up where that water splashed, and it's the potential. If you look at this diagram down here, this potential water level is high, but what happens is the wave collapses and it just runs in as a sheet. So it's a nuance. The FEMA maps show this potential total water level. So if you look at a FEMA flood map, the elevation they're showing is higher than the ground because the wave runs up. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make here is that if you have a bluff or a hard armor like the revetment in front of most of this shore, Highway 1 and Marana Road, what happens is the backshore can erode. So, but the wave run up keeps going, right? It doesn't have room to dissipate. So instead of going inland as far, it goes up and then it crashes and then rushes inland as a sheet flow. And what that means is in this area where we have long period waves and we have a very fixed barrier, you can expect the wave run up to increase about 4 times sea level rise. So if sea level rise goes up a foot, the next time you have the same event, that wave run up and that splash is going to be potentially 4 feet higher or have a lot more momentum and damage as it rushes in. So this is part of the problem. Things are going to get worse, basically. That's what I'm saying.
Would you mind going back to the slide where you showed Obispo Road and it had a yellow line on it? Because I
Yes.
think we can all relate to that. And that's where they built the brand new fire station. And you went by so fast. I wasn't sure what the yellow line represented. Future Bluff Edge, right?
Yes,
But that's where Coronado comes out to Highway 1, right?
yes.
So all of that might be underwater or the bluff.
Yeah, this is a rough estimate of a potential future bluff edge if Half Moon Bay was allowed to reach a new equilibrium. What after the breakwater construction. So basically what you have is a hook-shaped bay within a big hook-shaped bay. So that's the theory, the plan form that would occur. It may take longer than say 2100 to reach that because there's a lot of energy that's needed to wave energy that would be dissipated in eroding the bluffs. But this gives you a feel, a ballpark as to how much erosion would need to occur before you would have a stable beach and before you could build landward of that yellow line without as much concern.
But it could eat away that much of it, basically.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's my opinion.
Thanks.
It's hard to predict everything. So now I'm back to the outline potential solutions near term. So I just took a shot at this is like a straw man, and there's things in here that some people will like and some won't, and there's a lot of other things that aren't in here, but I just took a shot at it just to kind of get you used to this kind of what's an alternative. So near term, what can you do now without relying necessarily on everybody else to go along with you in the short term? What are the people that live on Murata Road can do? What can they do? So one is flood proofing. There's things like low flood walls, window and door shutters, drainage features. When the water comes over, it's got to go somewhere. Look at that as a way to get the water back to the ocean away from homes. That rock revetment, until people are out of the way, that probably needs to be maintained. Or else there'll be damages. It's kind of obvious. But also there may be a point when people can, if they'd like to, start thinking about realigning and accommodating the flooding rather than potential erosion rather than fighting it, because it's already pretty dicey, in my opinion. Another element is sand placement. Hopefully the Surface Beach Pilot Project will be implemented this in 2025. Hopefully it'll pass muster with the Marine Sanctuary and everyone else. And so hopefully that can be repeated. That would help. And then the last one I think is really important, initiate a regional integrated coastal adaptation plan with the county and the Harbor District and Half Moon Bay. I'll get into that later. I'm going to try to pick up the speed here. I think I'm taking a little too long, but here's pictures in Pacifica where I live near Beach Boulevard and Shoreview neighborhood where the waves got so big in the last couple of winters that people's homes were damaged way up, above a 30-foot elevation. And you can see they have storm shutters and there's still some repair on this house. For years, people have built little walls in front of their homes and they put barricades that are removable. They put boards and the like in front of their garages. Otherwise, the garage gets blown out and they have sand and crabs in their garage. That's true. And then as far as the landscaping goes, this is a bench. And but it's actually also designed as a flood wall. The waves come over, they hit this wall and some of the momentum is dissipated. And then here south of the pier, the waves came over and flooded so much and transported so much sand that the city put in these K-rails, which are like the Caltrans little concrete barriers to try to knock the water down before it hit the homes and their fences and try to control the drainage. Revetment and road modifications. I took these pictures a week ago Monday. On the left, you can see a rock revetment and pretty big rocks, but it's really steep and there's some voids. And here the beach is built back up some, so I'm not sure there are probably more voids below, but that's the kind of thing that can just kind of fall apart in the next big storm. That's a little bit of a risk. And then of course you can see the road here. What I notice is the road's been changed to one way and the vehicular way has been moved landward, and that's a good adaptation. for this situation. This is another picture of Pacifica up on the Esplanade. This house has been removed. They couldn't find a place to put it, but they did move it back from the bluff. And it's just an example of how you can jack up houses and move them. And sometimes a few feet might make a big difference, maybe 10, 20, 40 feet if you have room. This is Stinson Beach, where people, when they built their homes, they put them on piles. You can potentially underpin and lift houses. That way the water can go underneath and you can still live there. It only goes underneath your house during extreme events. Something done a lot on the Eastern Gulf Coast. Regional adaptation. This is really important to get started soon, in my opinion. And I'll just read through this. First aspect of regional adaptation is to develop a multi-entity framework. I think the principal jurisdictions are San Mateo County, the Harbor District, City of Half Moon Bay, Granada Services District, and others. I'm sure Caltrans, whatever. But you have like a governance land jurisdiction body, but you need advice and involvement from your public works and obviously stakeholders. The little diagram on the right shows how the Ocean Beach Master Plan that I was involved in was set up by SPUR, this planning agency in San Francisco. We have a steering committee, a technical stakeholders group, close technical review and QC, and then a lot of public meetings and workshops. So when you get that going, you develop guiding principles, goals, and objectives. You develop an adaptation plan. Ideally, that would be incorporated into a coastal plan, a local hazard mitigation plan, and then ultimately your capital improvements plans. And ideally, you would have a sub-regional coastal plan or adaptation plan that's in the Half Moon Bay's coastal plan, harbor districts, the counties, that kind of thing. Then it's codified, it's easier to get things done. So if you followed my list of near-term actions, here's a little schematic where one, we have sand dredged from surfers, from Pillar Point Harbor and placed at Surfers Beach. You know, that could be extended, more sand, placing it farther south in front of Marauder Road. And then the long tan orange line is just schematically saying, try to find some more sand and place more sand than what you can get out of the harbor. And the other bubbles are just this regional planning context.
I don't get that. For instance, you didn't show removing the breakwater, and why are the circles on the land? What does that mean? It means that the properties in those areas need to do something?
No, it's just a schematic indicating that these bubbles are very touchy-feely schematic. This is my attempt at being a landscape architect or land use planner, which perhaps is not that good at it. But the idea is that, you know, this one here might indicate the harbor, and this one over here might be the El Granada and the county, and here's Miramar, and here's Half Moon Bay, and here's everybody else, the sanctuary and state of California. So it's just an idea that just schematically trying to show that everyone hopefully will work together to achieve adaptation and reduce the hazards. And then I have this little line here at Marauder Road, which is all the other things I talked about, floodproofing, revetment, realigning. I think this kind of approach could work for at least 10 years, but I'm not sure that I would expect this kind of approach to last indefinitely, because it looks pretty dicey to me right now. Sorry to be a bummer, but that's what I think. So now intermediate term. So again, an adaptation plan, you do stuff now, and then it takes time to do bigger stuff later. So now we're going to the next step. This might go through 2070. Flood damage mitigation, structure infrastructure modification to accommodate or mitigate hazards, close the roads, relocate infrastructure, modify structures. Realignment, inland relocation is another component that some might be worth pursuing. I think, you know, that's a tough one socially, but it might be worth considering. Restore shore to wider equilibrium. here you increase the sand supply. And I'll show some ideas on how to do that, but then perhaps build some, what we call sand retention structures. And the idea is that you put these structures out in the surf zone and they reduce the rate at which sand is moving away from where you place it. So you don't have to keep placing it. And you kind of change the equilibrium. You can get some ecology and some surfing out of it, but because otherwise you might adversely impact surfing. So you're trying to pre-mitigate or have a balanced approach, multi-objective. Incorporate Highway 1 modifications. I think Caltrans is going to have to look at modifying Highway 1 one way or another. Maybe it's going to be realigned. Maybe it's going to be raised on piles. It would be nice if there were pedestrian under or over crossings. I mean, it makes me nervous when I see all the kids walking across the street, and everyone's very nice, but there's a lot of people trying to get through. Another idea we came up with working with One Shoreline is the offshore reef augmentation concept. I'll show you an image. And then the adaptation plan is something that goes on almost indefinitely at this point with sea level rise projections. So here's a slide that I showed before, some creative sand placement. This is kind of the surfers beach project that the Harbor District is going to implement in 2025. And it's just some ideas of maybe after we do this a couple of times, we could have some fun with it. And there are rocks out there still, so I want to make sure the surfers don't run into the rocks. Here's a diagram of an artificial reef. The top diagram, this is a plan view, so like you're looking at a map. And the ocean is out here, and then the land is back here. This would be the bluff. And let's say this little dotted, I have a hard time with this, line is the existing beach, which is kind of generous. The idea is that the reef would dissipate waves and change the wave patterns such that the beach would be wider behind it. And when the beach is wider behind it, that means that the wave run-up doesn't reach the bluff as much, which means the bluff doesn't erode as much, you don't get as much overtime. And then this section A is what that big black thing is cutting. This is looking sideways. And so here you have the reef, and this blue line represents a wave coming and breaking, and then the broken wave kind of dissipating in the wider beach. Another idea that I think I came up with this one in 1999. And I think it's getting harder and harder to implement. So, but I want to show it anyway. Daylight and reroute Deer Creek. So right now, I think you guys know this, that Deer Creek comes it's in a pipe. It daylights briefly where these trees are, then it goes underneath the highway and daylights at the parking lot for the trailer boats and stuff. And it basically every El Nino it dumps a lot of sand on the boat launch. So one idea we had was, why not just daylight it, which means take it out of the pipe and bring it up to a surface channel and reroute it downhill along this corridor, and then have it discharge one way or another past the road and into Surfers Beach. So the sand that does come down there would go to the beach. And it could be part of the nice park. And I understand there's a park plan that, again, it's just an idea. So here's a diagram of what a road modification might look like. This was from a work we did at Elkhorn Slough for the AMBAG, Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments, with funding from the state. Caltrans was involved. And these diagrams show what a 2-lane road looks like on embankment fill, raised above the flood level. That's at the top. And at the bottom is what a 2-lane road would look like on piles. There's some variability in all these dimensions, but as I understand it, this matches the Caltrans current guidance. They'd probably like to make the road wider, but if it's 2-lane, this is what it might look like. So this is the midterm adaptation scenario, 50 years plus. Install multi-purpose reefs and living reefs and sand placement at surfers. and Miramar beaches. So that's what these little blue things are, these little reefs. And schematically, this is sand depositing behind the reefs, and there's a wider beach here. And then, you know, this could be repeated down at Miramar. And then I have two headlands here. These are kind of like groins, but this is another sand retention structure. There's different ways this can be done. There needs to be an engineering feasibility analysis, look at all this stuff, and to see what would work, what's feasible. The second item I have here is kind of a bookend or a hybrid of what I just talked about before, was basically building the beach back out where it doesn't want to be because of all the things, the problems that I talked about before. That's kind of one extreme. The other extreme would be to relocate buildings and development landward. And I was just looking at a map. I have no idea who owns this property. Hopefully I'm not offending anyone, but it's not, there's no structures on it. So I thought it's possible that things could be relocated farther back. Wait for the shore to come back to you. But those are like things that can be combined or done separately. Those are options. And then we have Reroute Deer Creek. We have the Caltrans Highway 1 project. And then this one I wanted to talk a little bit about. This came up again with the one shoreline work we did. There are reefs that come down from Pillar Point and go to the south, right? And there's a couple navigation channels through there. When sea level rises, the water depth is going to be greater above those reefs. That means that bigger waves are going to pass through unbroken, which means bigger waves are going to reach the shore. So, and I'm not sure what the ecological effects are. I'm guessing that there's some critters that like to have a little more sunlight than others, but in my mind, it might be worth thinking about augmenting that with some rocks to maintain the depth shallow enough that the waves don't increase that much on the shore. That would be a benefit. And hopefully there'd be some ecological benefits to that. So it's just an idea. It hasn't been vetted yet. How am I doing on time?
If you want to do some Q&A, you should probably feed it along.
All right. I'm just going to go over a couple of slides in long-term where I get into this long-term planning. And then the discussion part just has a bunch of slides. I'll leave these with you. So here under long-term, I talk about, these 4 adaptation strategies. These are like bookends or kind of single perspective. Usually there's a hybrid. Adaptation is an ongoing process. As sea level rises and erosion continues, so then you have a pathway, a series of thresholds where you have to take action, triggers where you have to plan or actually implement that action before you reach the threshold. The difference is the lead time. And then there's timing based on sea level rise and actual events. So this is from the Coastal Commission guidance, get it online. You can protect, you can intimidate, you can retreat, and then there's hybrids. This is like a Venn diagram or whatever. It shows that in the solution space, you can have more hard treatments, you can have soft treatments, and you can have no action. And most things are somewhere in the middle. This graph shows time on the horizontal axis, risk for sea level rise or erosion on the vertical axis. So the red line shows risk increasing over time. There's a certain acceptable risk level for fixed property. You do something now that reduces your risk, so the green line dips down, but then eventually your risk increases. So this is the adaptive pathway concept that you have. There's a series of actions, and the later actions may vary. I'm not going to go over this, you can look at it, but well, anyway, so the Ocean Beach Master Plan, we have a threshold. We plan to implement something at South Ocean Beach in the early 2020s. Looks like it's going to be a few years later, but they're working on it. There's a lead time from when we did this in 2010, and that's the trigger. The trigger is when you start planning and dealing with it really seriously threshold is when you have to have it implemented. Designed for 2050, which means you have a new threshold by 2050, which means you got to start sooner than that. This is an adaptive pathway from that Highway 1 study. It's a little different. Sea level rise and time is vertical, but what this shows is a branch. And what's important here is that some actions you take now may preclude or make future adaptive actions more difficult or more likely. And so that's it. I have a bunch of other slides that just talk about things like beach nourishment and placing sand as an embankment so it can erode, and structures and seawalls and natural infrastructure, sand dunes, cobble berms, managed retreat. I'm sorry, I meant adaptive realignment.
You live in Pacifica.
It's a tough one. I tell you, it's a tough one. And so there's all kinds of land use methods you can employ. I want to show this real quickly. This is the South Ocean Beach master plan thing I'm talking about, which is going to be built. And there's a big wastewater treatment tunnel. It's about 15 feet in diameter, below beach level or close to beach level. And so this is managed retreat, but with a structure, so the shore can migrate over it. And we got some cobble, we got some dunes, we're removing armor. It's a hybrid. So you can have structures in a long-term retreat process to hold on to infrastructure that you need to pay off your bonds or whatever it is, or hopefully technology or something makes it easier in the future. So with that, I will end. Sorry, that was a little long, but hopefully
It's a good presentation. Thank you. Let's have questions from the council first, and then we'll invite the public. Anybody you want to ask them?
So
Greg and then Dan.
looking at Surfers Beach, is that offshore reef that currently exists? As a sailor, I know I have to go well south before turning north. Is that something that can be done relatively soon? And would that mitigate the erosion? It would seem like item 1, which is moving the sand and building those artificial reefs, combined with item 5, would that be enough?
which one was item 5? I'm trying to
That
remember.
was taking the reef and building the
that's right.
offshore reef up.
Yeah. So yes and no. Yes, as an engineer, it could be done. No, I don't think it could be done quickly because of permitting and the marine sanctuary, and there needs to be a whole level of analysis because the reef has ecology value, and so the question would be, would raising the reef, would it be a net benefit or a negative? And if it's a negative, if it's allowed, what would be the mitigation? So we're talking about, EIR, EIS, environmental impact statement with the feds and permitting. So I think that's probably a longer term.
So let me just put words in your mouth and then you can spit them out, okay?
Yeah.
So because we can't do the reef soon enough, we have to live with increased damage and cost inshore until we can get around to doing the reef.
Well, it may not be a good idea.
The reef may not be a good idea.
It may not be a good idea in the collective, I'm an engineer, so I'm coming up with ideas for people to look at. And so, because I like to solve problems but part of the problem is what is the effect on ecology, on the environment and on other people. And those are important considerations that other people have to decide. I'm not qualified to decide. My gut feeling, having done this for 40 years, is that's a 10 to 20 year minimum. So that would be in the midterm, which is, I don't think you could get that started anytime soon. You could start talking about it though.
Well, I understand it's been done in Southern California somewhere. I think Captain Slater Gardner was showing diagrams someplace down there.
Oh, they do have artificial reefs and for there's several that have been put in and for mitigation of other adverse effects. power plant warm water discharge is one of them, I think, that's recently been mitigated, and then there were some other ones. So I think I think physically it can be done. But whether or not it could be allowed, and then there's a funding, although I don't think that would be that expensive. You'd want to get the right rocks, and you'd want to do it right, because the texture of the rocks are important for different organisms to attach to them and live on them, and that would, in my view, be an important consideration for everybody. So for the rugosity, I guess. So it's the type of rock, and so there's some thought that would need to go into it beyond what we're doing.
Thank you. Dan, you wanted to?
Yeah, thank you, Bob. So I heard on your slide there that you sure folks can meet San Francisco, so you're aware of that O'Shaughnessy seawall from the Cliff House.
Oh, yeah.
And that's been there for 100 years. And I've seen over the years, this kind of sand go up and down, but sometimes I see the sand, blowing over the stairs onto the sidewalk up there by the road. I know it's not apples and apples, but I just want to make the note that that seawall's been there for 100 years, and it seems like. But you mentioned.
I can make a comment on that. I've studied that quite a bit, but go ahead with your question. I mean, your point's well taken. Basically, I'll just give you, instead of getting all the history and why it was built when now it's not needed and all that, is things changed and a whole bunch of sand deposited. So now it's 800 feet in.
Yeah.
So now the problem is there's too much sand.
But they've been mining the rivers. They've been mining the sand mining. The delta and everything, right?
Yeah, there is sand mining in central San Francisco Bay and
less.
Well, yeah, actually, I'm involved in that too. The BCDC will be putting out some reports on that. I'm on the independent science panel for that. I don't want to comment on.
So you mentioned sand retention structures at some point. Have you ever heard of sand savers? They're essentially kind of like K-rails with holes in them that are not straight through. So where the wave structure hits it, there's sand in the water, and it kind of starts out with a large wall on the other side. It kind of shoots out a fire hose and spits the sand up. Sounds like you're not familiar with it.
I'm not familiar with that particular one. It sounds like something that might work in Florida.
Okay.
On the Gulf Coast.
Apparently there's, I'll show you, I'll send you a link. There's some kind of a study in Hawaii. It's a positive study.
Oh, well, yeah, no, I'd be interested to see that. I have to be skeptical. I don't think anything.
When you were talking about sand retention structures, were you talking about the artificial reefs? Is that
an artificial reef, what we call a multi-purpose reef that's not just for fish or for surfing, would be considered a sand retention structure.
Okay.
That would be that's the purpose of one of the purposes of.
Okay, and the breakwater today is mostly straight.
Yeah.
What if it was not? What if there were curves or other shapes, or is that kind of opens up engineering complications to where possible placements of these reefs might so I guess the ultimate goal is to possibly change that projected bluff edge,
You could put in some little spurs on the breakwater to knock down the coherence of the wave, the reflected wave, but the problem is our swells are so long, the wavelengths are so long, that little things like that don't necessarily change the reflection intensity that much. And the other reason not to do it is because the reflected wave actually creates good surfing. It's part of the waves come in and the wave reflects and they come together, they form a little peak, and you can surf right and left. So it's a little tricky. It's both a problem and a benefit. The reflected wave.
Can I send you that study on that?
I would like to see it. Yeah, I hadn't heard of it.
Supposedly it was well looked at, peer reviewed, and extensively, and came out positive.
My initial feeling though is that when things really get going here with the big swells, nothing but a 10 to 20 ton rock is really going to sit out. That's it.
20 ton
or
sand dune?
40
ton sand dune, or 60 ton sand dune.
Well, they do make big sandbags. there's like erosion control fabric, like a filter fabric type stuff that are made into like big sausages, and they hydraulically pump the sand into it, and it becomes a big structure. That some of them have broken apart and stuff, but there are some other innovative ways other than just big blocks. But my point is that even in that area, Surfers Beach, which is protected, the waves can get so big that you have to be careful.
I'll send you that. All right, that's all I got. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very
Awesome.
much.
Any other council questions? No?
You want to stop sharing your screen?
Yes.
Maybe somebody in the audience has a question. I can't
But I
see.
kind
Yeah, I
of want to leave
see,
a picture of me surfing up a little.
Oh, Kimberly.
All right, should you open up?
Kimberly.
Kimberly and then Natalie, yeah.
Two things. Bob, I wonder if you could comment on the one shoreline concept of reconfiguring the breakwater and what that might, what that might entail and how that might change things. And then,
so I worked on that with One Shoreline when I was with ESA, and I think there's some possibilities there, and we just again from a physical process standpoint, the idea being that if we modified the outer breakwater, you could still have the harbor. It would be a little smaller, but the sand would move through better. I just don't think the Harbor District, I don't think that's something they really want to pursue now, so I didn't want to present it. Again, I think we're trying to team build here, and I'm trying to be respectful, so I didn't want to present it, so I'll leave it like that.
okay, I respect that. I think we were very interested, at least I was very interested in it, and I know others were in the community, because the community really didn't get a chance to look at those ideas, and many of us thought that they were very promising. So,
well, I think I would suggest working on a collaboration with the Harbor District and going through a process, and at which point to get to the point where they feel comfortable talking about that. I for whatever reason, the way we did it before I'm not sure it was fully productive in a sense. So,
okay,
yeah, I didn't want
fair enough.
that negative outcome.
Regarding Dan's question about sand savers, I actually did speak with some people in Hawaii who have looked at those, in the place that they've been experimented with, and they felt that they were no different than a conventional barrier. Because they're kind of like the barriers that you put in the middle of the highway. They're essentially these, I think they're concrete, and they have holes in them. So the water the sand can flow in, but less of it can flow out because of the way the holes are configured. So I didn't hear good reports from that, but that's just an anecdote.
Are they put on the sea floor or up?
They're actually on the beach, so they end up like similar to a rock revetment. They sit on the beach
In an arc form.
Mm-hmm. I'm not familiar with those. We have used K-rails, which are like that, I think, as an emergency situation where there's a scarp to prevent further erosion. And, again, if the sand wants to come back, it does, but I'm not familiar with that particular product.
But does anyone else have questions?
Yeah, I think Natalie has a question. So Natalie, do you want to go?
Hi, yeah, thank you for your presentation. That was really informative, and it sounds like you've put a lot of thought into it, which is great. I run the Pillar Point's Tidefall Stewards program over on the Pillar Point Reef, and I work directly with the San Mateo Marine Protected Area, and I'm really keen on knowing more of your plans, particularly around the ecological impacts to the Pillar Point Reef changes that you proposed, and would be willing to put you in touch with the correct people to actually talk about the ecological impact and potential solutions you've got there. The Pillar Point Reef isn't technically part of the MPA, but it is really important biodiversity area, and it's got a huge amount of ecological importance as well as importance to traditionally unrepresented minority groups in terms of fishery and harvesting. So yeah, I just wondered if you could elaborate more on the plans for the artificial reefs on that side. Some of the questions I wasn't sure whether you were answering about the artificial reef on Surface Beach, or if you meant the artificial reef, like you mentioned raising the reef. Is that correct? Could you go into that more detail?
Yeah, and so raising the top of the reef by placing rocks on top of it. So it basically, the reef would be what it is, and then we would place rocks on top so that the top of the reef would be higher. And the idea being that as sea level rose, let's say sea level rose 3 feet, we would make the reef at least 3 feet higher. So then the depth over the reef would be the same, so that the waves passing over the reef would be the same.
And you mean Pillar Point Reef there?
For that one would be Pillar Point Reef, yes.
Because that could have potentially huge ecological impacts to a very delicate marine ecosystem. In California, we actually only have 17 square miles of tide pool reef. And it's a really important microbiome.
Well, yeah, and I really appreciate that comment. And I've done a lot of ecological restoration, not so much on rocky subtidal habitat, but I do respect that habitat. I've run into it a couple of times accidentally surfing, and it is habitat and it is important. And so yes, I agree, it would have to be looked at. And the idea though would be perhaps there would be a no net long-term loss of habitat. There might be an initial construction impact or something. I don't know. It's just
Sorry to interrupt. A lot of these ecosystems are so delicate that even the initial impact could wipe out species locally. Can I ask what your plans going forward? Do you can I get in touch with you directly and we can talk about hooking you up with the Marine Protected Area Collaborative Network for you to talk further about this?
I would like to do that, actually. I'm very interested in this. This is coming up in other locations, not only modifying an existing reef by placing rocks on it to keep the wave transmission the same, but also in constructing new reefs over sand bottom where there's benthic organisms that would be impacted. And whether there's so that whole topic, I think, is really important. And I will provide my contact information to the group here, and they can get you in touch with me.
Great.
Thank you very much. I will do that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Any other questions from the audience for Bob? No? Awesome. Well, Bob, thank you so much. This is a really impressive presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks for inviting
Before
me.
you go, can I bring up one more thing? One thing we didn't touch on, or you didn't touch on tonight, and I actually didn't mention this to you, but is the cost associated with some of these things, which is really important. And so I wonder if that's something that you've dealt with at all.
I thought somebody might ask that, as an engineer. And so my answer would be somewhere on the order of $500 million. $100 million to $1 billion is kind of what we're talking about, roughly. Just shooting from.
And by that, you're talking about the sand retention and the artificial reef, or are you talking about all of those potential strategies?
Anything that you do or don't do, it's going to have a, like for Pacifica back in 2010, working on a study like this, we came up with a number that it was $200 million in lost property and revenues, or it was $200 million in sand placement, or $200 million in seawalls, or 200 million, it was $200 million. And I think here you're probably, now that there's been inflation, and I'm just shooting from the hip, $500 million is just as a number. It might be 100 million. And of course, it depends on who's paying and whether you count that or not. But just looking at the whole thing, somebody having home damage versus the state building something or not building something. And that would maybe include Highway 1 too, I'm not sure. So, it's just not, maybe that helps a little bit with the sticker shock, but it's not a small thing.
No, and I'm assuming that's spread out over a long timeline.
Yeah, that would probably get you through 2100. Or at least 2070, I guess I would say, depending on how much sea level actually rises.
And do we have an idea of what the cost is to delay in planning for those kinds of things?
I think it's just add up all the properties and all their values and the road being closed, and that'll add up. It'll be either damage or economic activity impacts. If you can't drive on the road and trucks can't get through, whatever, tourists can't get through, that's an adverse effect on the economy. So I think it's sorry to be, bearer of bad news, but I think I've been watching this for 40 years. Other people have been watching it longer than me. It's time something is done. It's a big problem.
Okay, thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bob. Really appreciate it. Okay, that gets us to trees. There's been some updates at the county on how they're managing trees, and we have Bharat Singh from the county to kind of walk us through an update on that. Bharat, take it away.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. We are here to present the tree ordinance update. Just to introduce myself, I'm the planning services manager with the county, and the presentation that we are going to have in front of you has been prepared by Dudek, who are the consultants working with the county on updating the ordinance. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. So do let me know if you're seeing the right things on your end. Hopefully this is saying tree ordinance update to all of you.
Yep, we got it.
All right, so with that, I am going to introduce our team. So from Dudek, we have the project manager, Kevin Cullinan and Jared Davis. And we also have the county arborist, Natalie Krug, as well, who will provide some key examples at the end of the presentation. So with that, I will just hand it over to Kevin. Kevin, if you have not already unmuted yourself, please unmute yourself and move forward.
Thanks, Bharat. So yeah, my name's Kevin Cullinan. I'm a urban forestry project manager for, we've got some local offices in Santa Cruz and Oakland, and we've been helping out on this ordinance update. So you can progress to the next slide. So why update this tree ordinance? So first of all, we heard community concerns about increased construction that would be impacting trees. We started off with two separate ordinances for significant and heritage trees, and we wanted to combine and consolidate those two into one single ordinance. We wanted to have a clear process for tree removal and trimming in both the development and non-development arenas. And we wanted to have equitable enforcement costs for unincorporated communities. And then lastly, we wanted to align the ordinance with other environmental and development requirements in the county. Next slide. So in the spring of 2023, we conducted a series of community involvement interviews, working with the county planning and code enforcement divisions, with local arborists, this former steering committee, North Fair Oaks Community Council, developer TJ Homes, and Mellow Oaks. And so we took their feedback and are addressing it. So in the next slide, the feedback that we received, to summarize all that, is that obviously there's a variety of different landscapes within the county, and those call for different tree regulations. And so we wanted to, or we heard that we needed to clarify definitions. We heard from applicants that they expressed challenges with inconsistencies in how different planners were interpreting the ordinance. So we wanted to clear that up. We heard that we needed resources for measuring trees for folks to know how to measure trees and determine tree species, as well as procure basic tree care. And then we needed a arborist report template as well to be updated. And then lastly, we wanted, or we heard that we needed to evaluate the replacement requirements, tree replacement requirements, and also add an in lieu fee. Next slide. So I'm going to hand it off to my colleague Jared to get into the specifics of what was actually updated in the ordinance.
Yeah, hi. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jared. I'm a certified arborist and California naturalist that did a lot of the authoring of this ordinance update. I also worked for Dudek. And here I'm just going to present you with a summary of some of the changes from what you know of the ordinance now, if you know it, and what the ordinance will be. So first of all trees greater than 12.1 inches in diameter at standard height, which is measured 4.5 feet above the ground, are now protected. This excludes undesirable species, including invasive species and species known to perpetuate fire risk. Protected trees also include heritage trees, trees that were planted for mitigation purposes, a community of trees, and protected indigenous trees, which I will elaborate on in the next slide. So for protected indigenous trees, we have species-specific protections. Hardwoods, such as the madrone and oaks, are protected at 10 inches, and then our conifers are protected at 18 inches. What you see here is a non-exhaustive list of the protected indigenous trees. There are a few more, but just for having a slide that was readable, we included what you see here. I'm ready for the next slide. Thank you. As well as tree removal permits, pruning permits were introduced, and these permits are necessary for branches that are greater than 6 inches on protected indigenous trees, those trees you see on the right. And also any size branch on an oak tree with a trunk greater than 30 inches in diameter. And heritage trees, when pruned, also need a permit. So in some cases, tree replacement is not the appropriate response to a tree removal, although that is the priority of the county. There are some instances when the site just really does not accommodate for a tree. In some of those cases, an in lieu fee can be charged. We developed this fee to be $3,345 per tree, and the fee gets funded into a tree replacement fund that supports further urban forest management activities like tree planting and replacement, and it may be used for public urban forestry initiatives, but also for private property when funding is needed. So here's just a quick overview of how the in lieu fee was developed. It was developed basically based on the prices that it would cost to replace the tree. So we took into account not only the cost of a tree when you buy it from a nursery, but also establishment and maintenance care. So that we're talking pruning and watering and mulching in those first years, the labor included with that. As well as in that last row, ecosystem services. We use the iTree tool, which is a well-known tool in urban forestry that helps people quantify the economic benefits of trees. So on this slide, we're talking about required findings. On the left side here is required findings for a tree removal permit to be approved. So yeah, in the left column, these are required findings in any case, and then in the right column is additional findings with development. So when a tree is to be removed, we want to know that there is a justification for this. This is basically because we recognize that there is a great value for trees in the county. So findings such as a diseased or declining tree, a hazard tree, a tree that is in the way of the growing conditions of a higher value tree, or trees that are causing damage to infrastructure, utility service, or causing geologic hazards. And then additionally with development, there are some requirements. Developers must submit an existing tree plan and tree protection plan. It must prove that there's no feasible alternative building site that does not remove trees. And lastly, we have included a stipulation that no more than 50% of a property's existing canopy is lost during development. Another change is the introduction of the expedited tree permit, which is a quick permitting process for trees that the county finds less desirable. These are often invasive trees or high fire hazard trees. And then as well as that, a tree replacement table has been developed. And this is based on the canopy size of a removed tree. So, excuse me. Yes, thank you. This is just the example of the updated tree list. Here it just shows, yes, these recommended replacement trees. This right here only shows the native trees. There are also recommendations for non-native trees to be planted. But you see here, this is kind of the resource given to someone who's removing a tree and the options that they have to decide which tree to plant. Lastly, a companion website has been developed, and this is mostly just to help out the community members of San Mateo in understanding and implementing the ordinance effectively. I think one of the most important and what will likely be the most used part of the website is the "Do I need a permit?" survey, which asks the user a series of questions about the type of project they're working on and what their property is like and the scope of work, and helps the community member understand what permit they need, if any at all. And I will pass this back to Kevin.
Thanks, Jared. So we are currently in the public comment period for the ordinance update. It opened June 23rd and closes at the end of this month. Obviously, we'll review any comments we receive from these community council meetings, And we are, the county has currently received several public comments so far, which we are currently taking the time to address and value these comments. So we are planning on uploading a summary document with responses to these public comments, which will be posted on the county's project website 10 days prior to the presentation to the Planning Commission for recommendation to the board. And then the next few slides are going to go over scenarios. Bharat, I'm happy to cover them, or if Natalie wants to take over, that's also fine.
Yeah, so Natalie is here, so if you can just unmute yourself, and then if you can, go ahead and do that.
Okay. Hi, I'm Natalie Krug, the San Mateo County Arborist. My pronouns are she, her. So in our first scenario, we have a tree removal application that comes in to the Planning and Building Department, which includes removal of 2 Douglas fir trees, one at 10 inches diameter standard height and one at 28 inches diameter standard height. In this scenario, the 10-inch tree would be exempt because only Douglas firs greater than 18 inches in diameter would require a permit, and the 28-inch diameter tree would be required to apply for a permit and would have to be we would have to make findings based on report and the criteria that is listed within the tree regulations. In the second scenario, we have a tree removal application not associated with development and an applicant who would like to remove several trees on their property. There are 10 Italian cypresses averaging 12 inches diameter standard height, which is essentially a row of trees along one fence line. 1 California black oak, 10 inches diameter standard height, located in the rear of the property. Cavities at the base, decline in canopy, fungal conchs, all verified by an arborist report. And 2 glossy privet growing within 5 foot of a primary dwelling, deemed out of compliance with local fire district's defensible space regulations. In this scenario, the Italian cypress would be able to be removed with an expedited permit. The California black oak could be applied for a protected indigenous tree removal permit because it is 10 inches in diameter. And then the 2 glossy privets would be exempt from permitting on account of the defensible space provisions in our exemptions. And for our last scenario, we have a removal associated with a home redevelopment. It's a wooded lot, which is common across the county, Oak Bay woodland. Canopy coverage is approximately 60% of the buildable area of the parcel. Existing canopy gaps over the driveway and roof of the existing home, half of the maximum allowable square footage is the size of the current residence. And so we have 3 potential outcomes here. The image on the left is which shows the existing structure and the 60% canopy cover of the parcel. The second would be an acceptable home redevelopment where the home adds the additional 50% of the home maximum buildable area and retains 50% canopy cover. And on the image on the right is an unacceptable home redevelopment plan where the 50% of the home structure is expanded, but the 50% canopy cover is not maintained.
So hopefully the presentation that we've had so far gives you an overview of what we've been trying to do. I just wanted to give the council an idea of the tentative schedule that we have right now. So some of the items have already been completed, so that we've presented it to the county staff. We've released it to the public. Again, it says June 21st. It was released on June 23rd. We've also made the same presentation to the Planning Commission, so they are informed. What we are hoping to do is this week we are presenting to you and then the North Fair Oaks Council, and then take more comments up till July 31st. And then we'll prepare for our recommendation hearing with the Planning Commission. At this point, we are tentatively scheduled for August 28th, but depending on how many comments we get and if there is significant changes that may happen, that might move. And then we are hoping to go to the board on October 8th. Once all of that is done, we will then figure out how we are going to bring this to the Coastal Commission hearing. Again, we'd like to get all of the work done to get the board approval before we get into the Coastal Commission hearing. So with that, that brings us to the end of our presentation. If you have any questions, please do ask. Our team is here to try and answer to the best of our abilities. And I should just reiterate, if you go onto this website, it'll take you to the actual draft ordinance, and there is links there to send us an email. If you have comments, you can also send the comments directly to me. My email address is bsingh, SINGH, @smc.gov.org.
Perfect. Thank you. It's a good presentation. Learned a lot. I have a couple comments / questions, and then we'll go around the council, and then we'll open it to the public. First, just comment. I saw there's one early slide that showed community involvement, and I noticed North Fair Oaks was in there, but I didn't see us in there. And as part of my ongoing mission to try to train the county to include us in those sorts of things, I would love, in the future if we could also be involved a little earlier. Just we have a lot of trees out here, and it's a topic that I think a lot of folks have interest in. So would love to be brought in a little earlier if it's possible. Second, I just want to confirm, I think this is true, but like eucalyptus are considered invasive. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Because they just look like Duraflame logs to me, and I'd be happy to see fewer of them. And then third, in the calculation of the $3,345 fee, I noticed like it's just a $200 an hour labor rate. I was just curious, like how where did that come from? Do you actually make $200 an hour, like growing trees? Because if so, that seems like a great business to be in. So I was just kind of curious where that came from.
I can speak to that.
Yeah, sure.
With the 24-inch box tree, it takes more than one person. So we're talking about a crew here.
Okay.
And I will also mention that in the ordinance language, we do have some language that says that it allows us the provision to update those fees based on the change in labor rates as such. So we have that incorporated so that we are not running into an issue where the fee right now will become, in the future may become insignificant in terms of the impacts and labor costs. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, well then let's go around the council. Let's go this way.
Okay, so I had two quick questions, and I'm sorry, I'm going to ask something that might be in the ordinance, but remind me what the defensible space limit is. Is it only 5 feet? Because I thought there were much larger distances required by the CAL FIRE people these days.
I don't think we know it off the top of our head, but essentially defensible space is defined, and whatever that definition is by CAL FIRE or our local fire districts, that is what would be applicable. So if an applicant does come in, they would have to say that, we've looked at the regulation put out by the fire district or whatever fire district they're in, and that is the defensible space, and therefore, we would have to look at that. So I don't know off the top of my head what the actual number is. It could be different setup for different districts, but I'm not aware of that.
Natalie, did you want to take an answer on that?
Yeah, there's different fire districts are going to have different requirements for where, say, 100% clearance of vegetation is. And it's important to understand with defensible space, a lot of times it doesn't include live trees, which are not considered high fire risk trees. And so say clearance of structures to provide lateral distance of branches and vertical clearance over roofs and fire chimney stacks. That's usually what defensible space is, not just cutting down all trees within 5 feet, 30 feet. There's different zones based on CAL FIRE and local fire districts.
Okay, thanks. I'm surprised at the canopy provision because it seems to me that would conflict with the building of ADUs and the increased density of housing we're being asked to make. So I'll just make that as a comment. I don't know how that's going to survive review. And then finally, we've had a number of people just this year come to us and talk about concerns that a neighbor's tree is a threat to falling on their house. Some cases it's in the medians in El Granado where it's an argument about whether it's county land or whatever. You guys are the planning. Do we go to Department of Public Works with those threatening issues? Or do we send them to the planning department? People are asking, saying they can't even sleep. They're so worried about a tree falling over. So some nature of hurry up is requested.
Well, if the tree is on another property or is somebody else's responsibility, I do believe it has to go to. There's two places it can go to: Public Works, and the other one being code enforcement if there are any code-related issues with that. But we can just provide you with some answers on specifically who to go to. I mean, it's not quite part of our ordinance right now, so I don't know what it is off the top of my head.
Yeah, I guess my request is consider this a use case where there's a potential hazard. What do people do? And I don't know where you want to document that. Thanks.
Okay. So my question is regarding the removal of trees by developers. And because these rules are mainly for homeowners. But the impact can be very significant, particularly with heritage trees. And so I just wanted to have you please update me. Are there any changes for developers in this new plan, or are they exempt?
No, this applies to developers as well. So if you saw in a couple of slides before, there is removal of tree permits for existing trees that are there, or like homeowners trying to, and then there's for additional development. That additional new development would require to come up with a tree protection plan, and that applies to developers as well. And again, the other aspects of it that, if you are developing a large property that has significant amount of trees, the new ordinance encourages the property owner to develop and not go more than 50% of the tree canopy, remove more than 50% of the tree canopy. There are some exceptions to that we will have to work out with the director if say the potential capacity of development that is allowed on that property cannot be achieved by preserving 50% of the canopy, then we may look at that a little more carefully. But overall, these rules apply flatly across existing homeowners as well as new developers or developers that are developing new projects.
Thank you.
Okay, Claire? Yeah, two things really quick. One, to follow up with what Ann just asked. To give an example here, the Cypress Point project, when it was approved, involved the removal of a lot of trees. Did that giving the permit to the project automatically give permits to remove all those trees? Was there separate documentation for each of those trees? How does that work when it's a large project like that?
So right now, that project was going through a planning permit approval.
Okay.
And once that has been done, they have to do a building permit approval, of which they would have to come up with a tree protection plan and a tree planting plan. If they are going to remove trees, they would have to replace it. Should this ordinance, get approved before they apply for a building permit. There are some other rules already in our existing ordinance that requires them to replace lost trees. But at this point, what has been approved is the planning approval permit. So the change in use and the intensity of use, that's been approved. They actually have to go through a actual building permit process, which will have additional conditions that would be that they would have to comply with. And as you had seen in the presentation, a tree protection plan would be required should our ordinance be in place by the end of October.
That's very helpful. The other thing I wanted to say is I'm very encouraged by your efforts here. I'm part of the group that looks at tree removal applications and landscaping issues with people's houses. And I often feel really bad for people that have to put so much money into maintaining their trees or taking them down or whatever they have to do to them, because it is expensive. But it's very helpful for us to see what your standards are and what your values are. And I actually like the fact that you take a stance that recognizes the value of trees to the community. So overall, I'm happy with what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yes. I have, Dan Haggerty, I have two questions. Number one, can we get an extension on this deadline? And the second question, you may not be able to answer it, but why is it so common with the county that we're just put in a position where we have a brief, presentation to finally get the, get the from the horse's mouth to get all the details, and then we have very little time to respond. And when I say respond, it's very important that we connect with our community members and digest everything that is really comes up with some of these issues. So I want to ask one more time, very politely, can we get an extension on this deadline?
So the deadline that we have out there is a requirement to put out ordinances like this for public comment for a certain period of time. That's why there is a deadline. But you are more than welcome to send in your comments to us even past the deadline. As I mentioned, our intention is to go to the Planning Commission for recommendation on August 28th. And 10 days before that, we are trying to collate whatever we have and put it out there, put it on the website. So these are the comments that we've gotten, and this is how we are responding to that. Should you need more time than July 31st, if you want to take all the way up to, say, August 8 or 9 and have your comments to us, I think that'll give us enough time to respond to that during that 10-day period. Even if you don't get to that, the opportunity is there to provide the comments at the public commission hearing because they release their agenda about 10 days before, if I'm not mistaken. And there's opportunity there to provide the comments, and we will accommodate all of those comments to the best of our abilities to make sure that we address all of them before the Planning Commission. And then obviously there is the board hearing that would have to happen after that. So there's more opportunity there to provide extra comments. So the deadline is more or less to sort of satisfy the requirements, the regulatory requirements of putting out an ordinance and saying that you have a comment period. But if you want to send comments to me past that time, it's fine. We will accommodate that.
Okay, thank you very much. Just so you know, the scheduling of our meetings is the second and fourth Wednesday of the month. So we meet 2 times a month, and we'll put our comments in when we can, I guess.
Okay. Awesome. Kimberly?
Yes, thank you. This is a really great presentation, and I echo what Claire said. I'm part of that group, and we often see these plans for tree removal, and that spurs a couple of questions for me. One of the things I noticed, you mentioned I think it was Jared that mentioned the tree replacement list. And I'm wondering why does the county allow non-native trees on the list? The council, when we review these plans, we always encourage native tree replacement. But often we notice that the arborist or whoever prepares the report sometimes recommends non-native trees. So could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I'd love to. So first of all, I'll say that both Kevin and I here representing Dudek come from a background of wildland restoration, and we definitely value the importance of native trees. In urban forestry, there is a little bit of a distinction. In our urban environments, trees are usually placed in small planters. The soil is often highly more saline than in the natural environment. And there's also a lot of small natural symbioses going on within the soil in a natural environment that is not going on in an urban environment. So often it's found that trees that thrive in a wildland setting and in large soil spaces suffer in municipal and urban areas just adjacent to where they're thriving. So with the value of the urban forest and the value of canopy cover for climate adaptation purposes, there are instances where a non-indigenous tree actually is the most beneficial tree to plant. When there is a possibility that a native tree can be planted, I'm of the group that says it should be planted. It's just not always the case.
And to just elaborate on what Jared said, the table that you saw at the end essentially is an elaborate replacement table that gives you, the situation where it may be feasible to put in a non-native tree. So it's not just randomly saying you can pick any tree and say that's what you're going to replace it with. It has to meet the context, as Jared had mentioned. So we are very cognizant of that, and we've made sure that we very specifically say and you would put in a non-native.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. The other question I have is something I noticed especially on the coast side, but all across the county, is that often some of the tree pruning businesses are not very knowledgeable about what they're doing and sort of do this indiscriminate pruning in which the tree ends up unbalanced or weakened over time, or they where you have many trees and the trees are bunched together so that they protect each other. Then they take all those out, and then there's one or two trees that then are exposed, and they don't last very long because then they no longer have that protective structure around them. So how does this ordinance in any way, shape, or form address the issue of businesses that perform this work that may not be qualified to do it?
The ordinance specifically doesn't identify businesses or licenses and as such, but if there is a suspicion of that, then there is a code enforcement aspect of the county that could be utilized. We do have additional information with the website. So the website is not just about the ordinance, it's about guidance and the format. And as you heard, we are also including pruning permits now. So we are hoping with all these additional information and knowledge that would help homeowners, as well as the new regulations that actually also include pruning or even the protections for groups of trees, we should be able to cover a lot more than what's been covered in the past. So I think some of those concerns that you've raised would come under the rubric of requiring a proper permit and having to do that. So hopefully that will be the case. We'll see as the ordinance gets approved and as we start to see permits, if there are any tweaks that we need to do, we could probably do that at a later date.
And is it the homeowner that applies for the permit, or is it the business that's doing the work?
It would be the homeowner. The business might apply it on behalf of the homeowner, but that has to be an approval from the homeowner.
Okay, so I guess I'm in that situation, I'm struggling to understand how then you would be protected from a business that necessarily doesn't know what they're doing. I mean, you can get a bad pruning job year after year, and eventually the tree has to be removed because it's been pruned badly.
Well, again, we now require pruning permits. So if the business says you don't need a permit, that's a red flag for you. And then if you have a permit, then you have to come up with a plan to, what are you doing? And that would be looked at by the county arborists, and making sure that things are being followed through. So hopefully, like I said, we've thought through this. We've added some regulations in there that would allow for us to sort of review pruning as well, so that we are not getting into this situation. So hopefully that'll take care of it. But as I said, as the ordinance gets implemented and as we see what's happening, we can then try and modify the ordinance to make sure that we are, if there are any gaps, we can fill them.
Okay,
I just wanted
that's
to,
really great. Sorry,
Go ahead.
Natalie, go ahead.
I just wanted to add on to what Bharat said, and your concern is certainly well heard and understood by myself, as well as many other professional arborists who do work in the county and have to contend with bad actors or undereducated tree contractors, I'll call them. And so part of the process of implementing the new ordinance is giving this educational component and those documents on the website, which provide guidance and encourage. It's really there to encourage these companies to understand what the best management practices are by industry standards. And frankly, if they're not submitting pruning permits that conform to that, they can't get a permit. And if the pruning is done under that permit and it doesn't comply, then the next time we get one of those permits in, we can have a conversation with that contractor.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's very helpful.
Dan, I see your hand up. Do you have?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I should have took it down.
Okay, all right, great. Okay, and we'll go to the public. Let's start with Melinda McNaughton, then we'll go to Jane after Melinda.
Hi, thank you. I have something that I wrote to say, but I want you to know that it's in the context of concern about the very large historical eucalyptus trees that we have in our area that are a huge part of our canopy. And literally, those are most of the trees that we have here. And so my concern is if we are continually going to be removing trees and they get the exemption and we have an expedited permitting process, we are going to be slowly removing our tree canopy and our protections for climate mitigation. So there are some things that my group, El Granada Advocates, has come up as requests regarding the draft ordinance. And we want you to just consider it, take a look at it. It's we're trying to help prevent our town from heating up because there are so many ways for people to take out trees now. I mean, people are wanting to take out trees just because they're tall and afraid of them. So, and then I understand the fear and where the fear is coming from, but also a lot of it has to do with maintaining the trees properly. Our requests and additions to the ordinance are adding a section of action steps for San Mateo County to preserve and increase tree canopy to mitigate climate change and keep our parklands and neighborhoods cool. Trees on the permit exemption list should be required to be replaced. It doesn't seem like they are right now. Reduced the list of trees that are exempt. Trees in sensitive habitats and along riparian creeks should not be removed. This is to prevent flooding and desertification of creeks and natural water sources. Do not allow tree removal trimming during bird nesting and bat maternity season. Residents need to know the best time to cut and trim, which is late September to late December. The county parks follow these guidelines, and so should residents and developers. We need protections for endangered and local wildlife. And I just want to give a local example of climate warming in El Granada. The circular median that was clear cut with 46 very big 100-year-old plus historical trees next to Quarry Park, I measured the temperature of the clear cut median soil on a sunny 73-degree day. The soil was about 135 degrees, very close to the asphalt temperature of the street, which was 134. The temperature of the ground under the shade of the medians was 71 degrees. That's over a 60-degree difference. This is a clear example of how removing trees has already heated up part of the neighborhood. When soil is baked like this, it dries out, important microbes in the soil die, and it is less of a source of holding moisture in plant life. Please consider our concerns and requested additions to the ordinance. Thank you.
Thanks, Melinda. Okay, we'll go to Jane and then we'll go to Natalie after Jane.
Hi, it's nice to meet your team, and we like many of the things we saw in your report. I wanted to talk specifically about Deer Creek. I sent you a letter, and you don't even have to read it because there's so many pictures. You can look at the pictures. But anyway, I live on Deer Creek, and when I moved here, I was told you can't even weed on Deer Creek. That's a protected riparian area. And I'm concerned about that causing erosion if people start taking trees down. I believe the GGNRA, which owns the Deer Creek at the very top of the mountain, has potentially removed trees, but I don't fully know if that's true or not. But I'm concerned about that silting and getting into the ocean, and also the poisons going into the ocean. These high trees, the community is quite split on eucalyptus trees. We know that they block the wind. We know that they provide cooling. And the newest research is saying these tall trees, actually, their microbes are seeding the clouds, which provides rain over the hill. And we wouldn't get that without the taller trees. So we have some concerns about the microclimate being affected if the tree canopy is vastly changed. I was going to read a selection from a 1976 Jacques Cousteau letter, which was very disturbing at the time I read it. He took at that time a very apocalyptic view of what happens if the oceans die. And we know if we get too many poisons or too much silt or too much problems in the ocean because we've removed too many trees, we could see those problems. He said all poisons end up as one poison, and it's one soup that ends up in the ocean. And he also gave the apocalyptic vision that without climate stability on the coast sides, it becomes too difficult to breathe because there's not enough oxygen coming off the ocean. But I am hoping, getting back to the more practical aspects of this, that if we're going to start changing our tree canopy, especially with 75% of our trees in El Granada probably being eucalyptus trees, that your team takes a very strategic look at where the trees should be left and where they should be removed. Because the people who live here love the herons, the eagles, the owls, the hawks. We want those. We don't want to resort to poisons because we no longer have those birds. It's quite a bit of the joy of living here. And so that is one request we have for you. We're also concerned about lawsuits that come when somebody removes a tree and that causes erosion. In my report, I sent you the flooding predictions on Deer Creek because that creek runs through the neighborhood. But with 75% of our trees being eucalyptus trees, if we have those removed in any additionally aggressive way, we will be losing our tree canopy. So we're asking that you take a whole holistic view on the coast side of what these tree changes are going to mean to the rest of the ecology that's here. But thank you so much for your work. We're very appreciative. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. All right, we'll go Natalie and then Sid.
Hi, this is the other Natalie. My pronouns are also she, her. I want to thank all of you for your presentation again tonight and for being so considerate and listening to all of our comments. I echo the responses from Melinda and Jane with my concerns, and I also ask for seasonal restriction of permit removal for non-emergency trees to accommodate the bats and the birds. So we are part of the Great Pacific Flyway. It's a really important migratory route for birds that are migrating south. And of course back north again. But we also have a vibrant local population of birds as well as bats that use the trees for shelter and for nesting as well as hibernation. So I think it's really important that we continue to push for timely removal of trees and major pruning. The other thing I noticed was I really appreciate how many more indigenous trees are added to the list. I thought that was a really great addition. The removal of the fee for removal of tree in lieu of replacement, I thought was a great step forward. However, at the moment, it seems to be paid to the county tree replacement program. And I would ask that be actually designated more locally to the removal of that specific tree so that it can have an impact on the microclimate that tree then removed its impact from. And so that we don't end up with people removing trees and the money that they have to pay in fines here going to add or maintain the already very healthy and existing canopies of richer neighborhoods like Atherton and places over the hill. On the subject of equity, I would also ask that you reduce the fee for appealing a permit, as I believe it's harmful to underrepresented communities and it's not egalitarian across the county. It's a lot less to appeal a tree removal in San Francisco, and it's already like arduous enough with people's time, people who have to work, people who have kids, people who have second jobs, people who don't speak the language fluently, that it's, you know, the cost of appealing a tree to be about $600, I think it is crazy high. I would also like to clarify some questions I had around the definition of sensitive habitat, which I noticed you removed from this document and put in another document that I couldn't find. And you also removed the restrictions around removing protected trees from sensitive habitats. And I just wondered if you could go into more detail on that as well. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, Natalie. Did you guys want to respond to any of that?
I would defer to Kevin and Jared if they want to provide some comments.
Yeah, so regarding the sensitive habitat, we do have the definition under section 99010, processing of protected tree permits. So under that definition, or on that section, we have sensitive habitats defined as the removal of, well, so let me see, make sure I have this right. Maybe it's not in there actually. We may have to follow up with that one.
It was in there, that it was in there, but it got moved to a separate document that you reference. But the separate document that you reference, I couldn't find. So the actual definition for sensitive habitat is no longer in that document.
I find it on page 17, just above item 45.
Is that in the track changes aspect? Is that the bit that's been removed?
Yeah, it's in track changes and it's
So it's there right now, but it has been in the track changes, it's being removed.
well, some sentences are, but not others, Natalie. I have to defer to people with expertise, but there is a section.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, it does look like the definition was deleted. So we can take a look at that and make sure we have a definition that's defined in the updated ordinance. So thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you. I just wanted to see if it was an oversight. I appreciate you looking into it.
Cool. All right, we have Sid, and then we have the mysteriously named resident. All right, Sid.
Hi. First of all, thank you. It's very comprehensive. However, I was on a tree committee many, many years ago, and I think Lisa Ketchum was actually on the actual committee. I was on the SAMCAR committee, which was San Mateo County Association of Realtors. We tried to lobby the Board of Supervisors to get a coastside tree ordinance together, because a lot of the plans in the planning ordinance only had a tree list that was more appropriate for trees over on the other side of the hill. And so obviously over here we have really strong winds, and a lot of the trees that they had on their list weren't really appropriate for the coast. So I'm sorry, I got 2 phone calls while I was on Zoom, and I couldn't hear it because I took the calls instead. I will go back and watch the video, but I was wondering if you had any coastside input while you worked on this, because I went back through a long time ago when Lisa was on the final tree committee that I think under Jim Porter, and they only got as far as doing, I think, Menlo Park for the unincorporated area, and they never did get back to the coast side. So I don't know if we actually have anything really for the coast side, or we're just an afterthought again, like we are tonight. And, here it is, the 23rd of July, and you have a July 31st deadline to give us, our input. So I'm wondering if you guys thought about the fact that, we're a different environment over here, and we have different trees and we have different needs because of wind and that sort of thing. Do you have a different tree list, etc.?
Well, I'll defer to Natalie and Kevin about the tree list, but in terms of referencing that engaging the coast side, as you mentioned, Lisa Ketchum was part of the tree committee, and this is the result of that effort. And before it was released to the public, we had shared with the original committee group. So Lisa Ketchum was able to look at it. She provided some comments as well. So I'm going to hand it over to either Natalie or Kevin to mention, respond to the aspect of having trees in the tree list that are more relevant to the coast side.
Okay.
Yeah, so obviously this ordinance is not specific to the Midcoast. This is for the entire county. And so we've had to create an ordinance which speaks to the county as a whole. And so we don't have necessarily regional specific replacement trees listed in the replacement list. But the list of replacement trees which is available, which was provided, a portion of which was provided in the presentation here tonight, is not includes species which are suitable for planting on the coast. That said, we could probably go through and maybe carve out a section that is specific and says these trees are incredibly suitable for coastal climate and wind conditions.
I would recommend that, especially if somebody is building a home and doesn't really know, how high a tree gets and how wind resistant it is and stuff. Because I've seen so many trees go down in the strong winds here. And I've lived here 30 years, and they'll just plant a big ass tree, and the next thing you know, winter comes along and there goes that tree. So anyway, a lot of the developers don't know when they go to coastside design review and they just plunk down a tree off the list. What do they know? It's on the list. Okay, thank you. I'll look through the whole thing because I'm sorry. I apologize for not being able to hear the whole presentation tonight. I'll put in my 2 cents on a comment letter. Thank you.
Thanks, Sid. All right, we have a resident.
Yeah, hello. So I wanted to give some feedback. And one of the feedbacks I had was there's not really a mention of invasive species in the document. There's a brief mention in the heritage section, but there's no specific definition for invasive species, which I think would be helpful for the general public, so they can distinguish between exotic species and invasive species, which are not the same thing, right? Additionally, I was looking at the protected indigenous trees list that you guys provided, and it seems like there's some native species that are missing from that list that I believe should be protected. So the list, I believe, should include, and all these trees have observations of being native to the county. Alnus rubra, which is the red alder. Alnus rhombifolia, which is white alder. Fremontodendron californicum, which is flannel bush, Populus fremontii, and Populus trichocarpa, which are Fremont and black cottonwood. Additionally, Pinus attenuata, knobcone pine, which has been spotted in Butternut State Park, Myrica californica, wax myrtle, Quercus dorata, leather oak, Juglans californica variety Hensii, also known as the Northern California black walnut, Sambucus mexicana, blue elderberry, Prunus ilicifolia, hollyleaf cherry, cited in San Bruno Mountain and other areas. And so it seems like trees that are protected tend to have lower thresholds for that protection, like the oaks being protected at 10 inches versus any other tree being protected at 12 inches. And so granting native trees that additional protection, I think would be helpful. And so those trees that I mentioned have been observed in either studies like the 2006 San Mateo County Parks Vegetation Resources that was done by Rana Creek Habitat Restoration, and the 2019 Vegetation Classifications of Alliances and Associations in San Mateo County that was funded by the Golden Gate Conservancy. Additionally, there was a section that talked about the county's protected tree replacement species list that we weren't able to gain access to. And I was wondering, would this be a white list or like a black list? White list in the sense that only the species listed will be able to be planted, or would it be a black list where we're specifying that certain species should not be planted? And my suggestion would be that there should be trees that are blacklisted. Any tree that is listed as invasive by the CDFA or by the California Invasive Plant Council. This has been done in other counties, such as Palm Beach County, which prohibits 9 non-native invasive plants. 6 out of the 9 are trees. And additionally, the Township of Warren in New Jersey has an invasive plant species ordinance that requires residents to control invasive species and prevents them from planting invasive species and trees into the ground. So those are my main concerns. And I was hoping if you guys could expand on the protected tree replacement species list.
Cool. Thank you for that. I don't know if there's anything in there folks wanted to respond to.
Yeah, we have, so as Jared explained, there are some, I believe, of those species that you mentioned potentially that were not listed in the presentation just because we couldn't fit it all on there. So some are, I think we can potentially consider some of the other ones. And we can talk about the black list of like potentially plants that are on invasive plant council's list, things like that. So we will definitely take that into consideration.
Yeah, we would love if you could send over that list of species that you just listed, because we would love to review that.
Yeah, I'll be happy to provide the list and the sources where I got them from.
Thank you.
And again, please do go onto the website. It's a guidance website, and if there is information that you believe that can be useful to the community, just send it to us, and we can then update the website to have that additional information.
I would make one comment based on the list of species that was provided. The ordinance is specific to R1 zoning districts and other very specific zoning districts across the county, and many of these species are unlikely to occur in the R1 zoning districts. That's not to say that they shouldn't be protected if someone planted a specific tree on their property, but they also might not know that that was a native tree. And so it's just, I think it's important that we don't necessarily want to I'll just leave it at that because this ordinance is intended for urban service centers and R1 zoning districts, that's pretty much what the focus of protection of indigenous species were aimed at.
Okay. Thank you. Melinda, I see your hand is still up. Do you have another comment you wanted to make?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. First, I just wanted to call out that this town is got big, tall trees, big, giant trees, right? And they are not necessarily indigenous, yet they're protecting us and mitigating the climate. And they also sequester huge amount of carbon. That's what big, mature old trees do. And also they are habitat for birds of prey, which is important to us. So if we went to all small little trees, I'd be very concerned. But I do have a question about the ordinance, and I was wondering, how do you guys hold anybody accountable if they don't replant, and how do you know if they're not replanting a tree?
So there is a requirement during when the building permit is issued or the tree permit is issued, they are required to plant and somebody will inspect that. And going forward, we are looking to try and actually map these trees so that there is an actual record of the actual location of the tree that will be replanted. And this is also to give future landowners or an idea of which trees on their property are protected, because every replanted tree is a protected tree. So we are working on that to try and develop a more robust system to actually account for trees much after the project's been done. And so that staff is aware of where these trees are located.
That's really impressive. I'm really grateful that you guys are working on that. My other question is kind of the opposite. How do you hold somebody accountable if they cut a tree down and they were supposed to get a permit for it to cut it down?
So that would be a code violation. There are processes for code violation. So if we get a notification of a violation, there's a process to go about that, and there are other mechanisms to that. This ordinance it does cover a little bit of the violation aspect of it, but there is a separate process for that. So at this point, I don't have the details in terms of what are the steps, but it should be outlined on our code violations page.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Melinda. All right, Jane, you have one more?
Yeah, I'll keep it really brief. I think that it's really great to have the native tree list, and I understand the benefits of native trees. But I also think it would be nice to see a separate list that was called climate stability trees or something of that nature, so that trees that we know can survive in a warmer climate is part of the mix. I think eucalyptus is probably an example of one of those species that is able to withstand the hotter climate. So that's why I'm a proponent of a mixed approach to the trees. But we always seem to be selecting things because they're native rather than addressing the problem of how can we stabilize this climate. But thank you again. I'll sign off. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jim. Kimberly, you have something?
I just wanted to, something that's been bothering me is that, I'll just say this, that there is also a value in carbon sequestration with the native chaparral and plants that, are native to the coast side, not just trees. And so I think that we should take that into account as well. When we talk about the value of replacing trees or adding trees, we should think about the fact that we're talking, of course, about the urban interface, the urban environment, but originally the coast side was mostly treeless. And that's not to say that there weren't habitats that didn't sequester carbon. And so I think it's important to keep that in mind, that the habitat we have today is not necessarily the original habitat that this place was. I guess I'm wondering, if trees are eliminated naturally on someone's property, for instance, some of the more rural, larger properties, I'm assuming they're not required to replace those, right?
Is there an answer to that?
Did we lose them?
No, we are here.
Sorry, that was a little discombobulated, but I'm just I'm thinking about the value of the native landscape as well, which didn't include a lot of trees.
Yeah, I think that's a really important comment, because the coast really didn't have many trees other than within its riparian corridors, historically speaking. And this goes back a couple centuries at this point, where trees were starting to be planted. So, you know, I don't think that, to a certain extent, I think that's why we have the in lieu fees. Obviously, if we're talking on we're talking about residential properties, for the most part. So if someone, wanted, this ordinance is specific to trees, and so I guess if someone was looking to like renovate their landscape and to creating a native garden, I think that would end up being a novel ask that would have to which might be able to be considered, but that's kind of outside of the scope of the tree ordinance.
So it's specifically R1 zoning, is that right?
It's aimed at R1 zoning, but then it expands a little bit beyond that. Pretty much rural service centers, and the otherwise R1 zonings, and the urbanized like resource management areas.
Okay, so properties that are sort of more further out, maybe larger properties that have trees that might have fallen in a storm, they're not going to be required to replace those trees.
Right. So if we're talking about like planned agricultural properties, or RM properties, they would have to go through their own permitting process, because they may in fact need a permit to remove trees and renovate a landscape with native, but that would be a separate permit.
Okay, so outside the scope of this ordinance. All right, thank you so much.
Okay. So I see your hand raised again, Melinda. Is it something specific to the ordinance? Because I don't want this to drift into a debate about the optimal botanical strategy for sequestering carbon. That's a little out of scope of tonight's discussion. But if there's something else that is specific to the ordinance, go for it.
No, it was specific to Kimberly's, what she just brought up about there not being any trees here. And that is true. And it's any plant sequesters carbon, but trees, because they're so large and have massive surface area, they sequester the most, especially the big trees. And there was no climate change 150 years ago. So that is why it's important to be concerned about it right now.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Closing public comments. Barat, Kevin, Jared, Natalie, really appreciate you hanging in there. I know it's getting kind of late, but this is a very, very informative discussion. Really appreciate you taking the time. And thanks so much.
Thank you. And I just want to remind the council that if you have additional comments past July 31st, we are more than happy to accept that. Please do so. You can email me directly or just email that link that we have on the website. And we will get the information and we will try and incorporate, what we can. There's a lot of good information that came out through this meeting, and we are certainly going to look at that and update things. So thank you very much.
Will your PowerPoint be on the MCC website if we want to look at it?
Certainly, I'll email it to to the council, and then they can put it up on the website.
Thank you. I'm sorry I missed.
Well, one more quick comment. We got so much information here tonight. We're going to capture the chat and send it to you, as well as give you a pointer to the recording of this meeting for this section of the presentation, pointing you to where those sometimes long-winded comments were made, because I bet you couldn't write that fast.
Certainly.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. Have a great night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Okay. Infrastructure. Greg, do you want to take us through a discussion of infrastructure?
Let me see if I can share this. Can everybody see the draft letter?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm asking the council to do is to authorize by vote me to send a letter like the one I've drafted here. Okay, this is part of a process Ray Mueller has started to address CRISP, which is Coastal Resilient Infrastructure Strategic Plan. And we've covered briefly the same thing a couple times in the past. What's different is they started a survey. Gus, do you remember when you attended the first meeting?
It was in, were we in July? It was in June.
It was in June, okay. And so then I attended 2 follow-up meetings. They provided an online form where people could submit their own ideas about what infrastructure was needed, okay? So I passed that form, Gus passed that on to all of us in the council, and I also passed it on to members of the community that I thought might have comments. And I also talked to, I'm going to say, every agency on the Midcoast. I know I wrote Half Moon Bay and others as well. At least I wrote them if I didn't actually talk to them. So what has happened is both individual residents and some of the agencies have filled out online surveys registering a project, okay? What will happen after they collect all the projects is they're going to decide with a priority mechanism what they're going to work on. So obviously it won't be everything we're raising, but I think it behooves us to put everything on the table so they don't think we only have 3 things that need to be fixed, okay? And we'll see what happens. Attached to this letter is a spreadsheet, and I apologize partly for my COVID and partly because of the difficulties I had in constructing the spreadsheet. There are things that will need to be changed. Lisa Ketchum made some comments just before the meeting. Burnett Silveria called me up and pointed out I'd done a wording error on his thing. So, you know, your authorization would be to allow me to continue to finalize this document going forward, plus including anything that comes up tonight. The stuff that's in green are where I'm aware somebody has already written up an online survey form. I don't know that I am personally going to be able to write another 40 online survey forms. Some of the agencies have written their own, but there's been some misunderstanding. For instance, Montero Water and Sanitary District thought it could only submit 1 request. The Harbor District submitted 3. And I talked to Ryan Reynolds, who runs this thing. He, partly because of our involvement, extended the deadline to this Friday when it previously been last week. I've now advised Montero Water and Sanitary District they can submit more. I got an extra one yesterday from Sam. I got some changes there. The Harbor District has done several. Leo Gomez put in telecommunications ones that we've asked for, and you just heard the bad news about them withdrawing one of the things. Mary Duffy and Montero put in one. Burnett Silveria put in one for the El Granada stormwater. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff here, which I will, oh, and I also got feedback from the people up on El Granada Boulevard, like Karen Allison, right? So they haven't necessarily submitted a form, but I've captured their concerns on this spreadsheet, okay? And when I fix the spreadsheet, there will be links embedded in it to the various reports and studies. There's a lot of things that have gone wrong on stormwater and the SAM plant where there have been published reports. Before I screwed things up, they were embedded links. Now they disappeared when I exported it to PDF. So that's where we are. And I guess it's up to you. We entertain what? Council comment?
Council comments, public comments.
Oh, do we have to make a motion first?
Yes, actually, we should make
We
a
have,
motion first.
so
before we do
we'd
this.
like a motion to authorize me to send a letter with an attachment as amended based on new information.
I think we need to look at it before you send it out.
Well,
I don't think.
Do we have a deadline?
we have a deadline of this Friday. They extended it from
I'm
last week.
sick of these deadlines. They're just made up. They're forcing us to rush through stuff and not do a quality job.
I can't fix that deal.
Well, we have to start fighting back. It's Is it,
This
is
a
it
lot.
truly that important? I don't think so.
I do. I think this is very important and.
No, but
This
the
is so
time, I'm not saying the
I mean,
topic.
I would like to do something, especially for El Granada, because they have been asking for so long.
Yeah,
I
but I
mean,
want-
I really would like to see them prioritized but I mean, all the work that Greg did, and this is really important. And unfortunately, I understand about the deadlines.
Well, let me just
But-
ask Gus, when did you first pass that survey out to us?
I don't know, like that.
We've known for over a month, Dan.
I mean,
We've known for over a month. Now, admittedly, this is,
No, all I'm saying is before you send a letter in response to this, I think we should have our eyes on it.
well, the letter is the easy part. The letter is right here.
Okay. The length of the spreadsheet.
Yeah, that is the complicated part. You've seen a spreadsheet like this before a couple of times in meetings. Okay,
Is every line on this related to that letter that you just showed?
yes. Yes, every line on this would be part of our
So
feedback.
how is this not responding to this with like, what was the term, a fire hose? It,
Well, they want to know what all the projects are, because otherwise how can they effectively prioritize and create a strategic plan for infrastructure? They don't know.
Suspicious minds might say they don't want to know all the projects because then they don't have to do anything about
Well,
them.
let's not go there.
Okay.
They've asked, they've given everybody the opportunity to put in the
Submit.
information, so we are gonna, this is our opportunity. It's our opportunity to just jump in there and be like, here are the 40 things we would love to have fixed. We're not gonna get 40 things fixed. It's not gonna happen, but we can put them all on the table and let them prioritize them how they wanna.
Well, maybe what would
I mean, are they
help
all
Dan, do you think
related?
we could add a sentence saying, we don't have staff. We've done our best to pull this together, but we want to be able to supplement this within the next 30 days. Would that meet your objection?
Supplement?
Supplement our submission over the next 30 days. We're doing a best efforts basis now, but we have
To
those
respect
staff
your
supporting
deadline.
our analysis.
Right.
So we're not asking for an extension per se, we're asking for an ability to supplement our requests.
This would be your request, this whole list,
Mhm.
right?
For now.
When you're
for
talking about
council's
supplement, are you talking about fine tuning it
or adding.
or making it bigger?
Yeah, I got new things in the last 2 days. I got 3 new projects.
This is the same thing we've been doing for like a year now.
It's a little bigger, but yes.
Yes, but now,
So where-
yeah, but now,
where
but-
has it
but
gone?
now, but now the county's actually asking for it as
Right.
opposed.
They
to
were
what
asking
we
for it
asked.
before. too.
No, they weren't.
Well,
No.
Mike O'Neill give say, but now it's an actual formal process. Staffed by people in the Department of Emergency Management. There have been 3 people on the calls from their group at the meetings I've attended, and they're actually looking for this stuff. They contracted with a company, if you go to the online survey, created a form and they're catalyzing. So it's a little more.
It's more
robust.
formal.
It's more formal, it's legitimate as opposed to just some casual.
Hey, what do you want?
Yeah, what do you want?
Okay, let me comment real quick, because we get moving here. I don't have any big problems with that. There are some descriptions of some of these projects that I think are not worded well, that I would take exception to. But, as I look at this big thing, and I see these things that I take exception to, I think, what the hell, it's a big long list, I don't even care. And I'm afraid that that's what what people are gonna think when they look at this big long list. They're gonna say, it's
all
too
good.
much, they're not gonna be able to take it
For
in.
example, remember, we're not the only ones submitting.
For
Like, we've
example,
asked every agency in the county to submit to this.
Is that true?
So
maybe we should be looking at some examples of what.
Oh, sorry, no, I know that's not true. I think it is,
This
I
is
think it
fair.
actually is just the coast side.
So,
Except I think there's, well, it's definitely the coast side. But so they've asked everybody. We're not the only ones submitting projects.
my point is, this is unfocused. And I wish there was a way to focus it.
well,
would
maybe
agree with
can
that.
we ask to come back and.
That's what the
and
prioritization
yeah, I
is
was
for,
gonna say,
focusing.
And can we prioritize? Can we
They're
ask for
gonna have
an
a priority process, which we'll be involved in
Mhm.
after the submission of the suite of projects. This is not the priority setting time. That's a separate process.
This is like brainstorming time. Like this is not the time to trim the list.
Can I,
This
can I ask a question?
Yes, Dan.
I mean, for example, line 4, 3 and 4, Moon Ridge. It's not even in our jurisdiction. Why is it on there?
I always ask that, Dan.
Yep. I put it on there because they have a stormwater problem and nobody else is looking at it.
But why should we?
Who else is doing it? Why should we?
The counties, well,
But nobody in the county is looking at it.
It's just gonna go into a giant list of projects. Like it's again, we're not the only ones submitting. So like, fine. So like, it doesn't really matter who surfaces the project in the brainstorm.
So one of the fears I have is with such a long list like this, it's just like I think Claire just mentioned. Whoever's gonna look at it is gonna kind of skim through, miss, and they might just say, well, hell, I'll just pick this one, and then process it along. If it's so long.
That's not the process as they have defined it.
But
Like they've outlined what the
Okay, I
process,
could
that
be
was
wrong.
the meeting that I went to, like outlined what the process would be. And this is we're asking everybody to submit what all the projects are. Both ones that are currently planned and the ones you would like
Okay.
to see.
Well, maybe this process.
And then
is-
once they've gathered all those ideas, then there will be a prioritization, which we will all also get to participate in.
Maybe this process is extremely
And we
well
will
funded.
be
and
lucky to
they're
get
gonna
3 of
utilize
these things,
all the
but like,
funds to-
but let's put it out there.
$200,000 raised a year or so ago by Ray. And I can't remember the name of that group of cities that he went before to get the funding.
CK.
No, it wasn't
Wasn't
CK.
Okay, whatever.
It was something, and you know, they gave us the money to do the CRISP work. And now it's being staffed by some county personnel.
Yeah, I see Lisa's hand raised. They
Well, we
usually
got
get
Marisol.
some.
Marisol first.
Oh, Marisol. Oh, hey, Marisol, go for it. And then Lisa.
Well, we have Kimberly.
And then,
too.
we'll, yes.
We
and
haven't
then we'll
had,
get
we
Kimberly.
haven't had.
But let's hear what
And okay, sorry, I just wanted to make a quick announcement.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to let you know that the supervisor did offer to have someone from DEM come and make a presentation if you'd like on the CRISP.
Yes, we would love that.
Thank you.
Okay, noted.
Thank you.
Does that change anything about our submission deadline?
Yes, should.
Is that a question for me?
Yeah, Marisol.
Can I let you guys know by tomorrow?
That'd be great.
Because I don't see why there would be an impact on your deadline, but are you guys asking for a deadline extension?
Yes.
Okay, all right, I'll send you guys an email tomorrow.
Okay.
I mean,
I'll be a little surprised if we get one, but okay. Then Lisa and then Kimberly.
Lisa, you're up.
Looks like she's trying to.
Oh, she's trying to find it. By the way, I think it'd be a tactical error to not submit on time. Even if
Yes,
we get
I
an
agree.
extension,
Yeah.
because
I think we should, we need to vote tonight to.
might get some useful feedback. by the
To
way.
submit it, and if we get an extension, then great, we'll use that, but.
I
but-
do
okay.
agree with.
Okay, let's Lisa talk.
Lisa's up.
Okay, so I did send you a couple of comments before the meeting, and I just had a question about number 10, Pillar Ridge Water Plant Replacement. Did this wording come from MWSD or where? It's underserved mobile home park. Who wrote that?
Can't remember, Lisa.
I don't like it.
Change the wording.
It's just wrong. And basically, so the water system has been transferred, it belongs to Montero Water and Sanitary, it's their project. And if they think, or if somebody thinks that calling this an underserved mobile home park will get the funds, that's unfortunate. Anyway, so I just prefer that to be worded differently as far as what that project is. And then
Well, how would you like it worded? I'm on MWSD. I'll give them back the feedback. But
Streamline.
She gave us the wording.
oh, did he really?
who did? Clemens?
Lisa, she gave us the wording. Go ahead, Lisa.
Interesting. I would just prefer it not say underserved, and it's not our water system. And
whatever. So, and then the other thing I sent you today, it's something I haven't talked to you about before, but something the culvert, where Pillar Ridge meets the marsh, is badly corroded and sinkholes and whatever. It's awful. And county parks, nobody wants to fix it. And I've done the research. It's all there as to whose ballpark it's in. Not on our property, but anyway, whatever. It's not crucial. This is beyond here, but it does seem like it might focus some light on it, on the issue.
That's a culvert underneath Airport Road.
Okay, so Lisa,
No, it's not under Airport Road. There's it's just an easement, an access road, and it goes through Big Wave property, and then it transfers onto
Okay, gotcha.
County Parks property.
to the list and let's see what I add.
Pardon?
I will add it to the list and let you see what I add.
Okay, thanks. That's all.
Okay, great. Kimberly?
So when is the deadline? Can you remind me again?
Friday.
This Friday.
Yep.
I'm also a bit concerned about, I don't have a problem with the length of the list because I understand that, that you just want to get everything on the table, but I also have some concerns about how some of these things are characterized. And there's a lot of Half Moon Bay stuff here. And honestly, Half Moon Bay should be submitting those things, not us. I also feel like even though we submit a large list, which is fine, I feel like we should choose what are our top 5 priority items here if we have a wish list, because yeah, it's great to get all these things on the list, but maybe we need to express some just express what we would prefer to see first if there are choices to be made.
Okay, well, okay, so wait, so one thing, just process wise. We're having a discussion, we haven't had a motion yet. So first of all, can we have a motion so that we can put it on the table so we can actually have a discussion?
Am I allowed to move? So I move I be authorized to send the letter with an attachment on Friday, subject to edits that will be presented to, like the ones for this.
Yeah, I think we should probably add 1 or 2 people to this group, but yes, but does somebody want to second that? Do we have a second?
Second.
Sorry, a second. Great. Now we have a motion on the table. Now let's discuss. I think you should have like at least 1 other person with you on it. Probably a second, just to we should have somebody who's more language oriented on it. So I don't know if that's Claire, I don't know if that's Ann, I don't know if that's Kimberly. Like I don't know who it is. Does one of you somebody want to work with Greg on this to language wise?
I would, but it's just bad timing for me. I just don't have the bandwidth right now I would love to jump into this and help, but I just can't.
So since we're in the discussion part,
yeah.
Marisol said that they're going to give us a presentation.
Yes.
That will most likely be very helpful as far as how we can help the process with what I agree with what Kimberly said, that I think we should have some kind of a highlighting of the most important issues or projects.
Okay, so
and that takes time.
Two things. Number one, I totally agree with that, Dan. But first of all, we have no idea if our deadline is going to be extended. So
what's the worst possible thing?
The worst possible thing is that none of our projects get put into this prioritization.
What do you think the likelihood of that is?
I am. Excuse me. This is the Midcoast. I am not taking a chance on that.
Okay. Well,
Just for point of information, the green ones have already been submitted by somebody.
So if they've been submitted by somebody, we can take them off.
Well, no, I think we could ratify them as a legitimate need. That's why I've included
Yes,
them.
I was gonna say, especially El Granada, I really think that that's
Yeah,
something that
whatever.
we should prioritize and maybe even put that in there that some
Yeah.
of the top ones,
Okay, so.
should be prioritized.
I just don't,
Marisol's gonna get back to us tomorrow. on the
Yes.
extension,
Yes, but we have to vote tonight because we're not gonna be voting tomorrow.
Pending on her response and the extension.
Okay, if the extension allows us to vote on August 14th, which is the next time we're meeting, I will be a little surprised if they bump the deadline that much. But if I'd be willing, I would happily accept a friendly amendment that says if the deadline is extended past the 14th, that we revisit this on the 14th with an
Except-
updated list and all that kind of stuff.
Except the meeting on the 14th is already jam-packed.
Okay, well, whatever, then who's gonna be here late? Pick what you.
We'll be at whatever
Do
location.
you want another
we're at.
chance to talk about it, or do you want sleep? You're gonna have to pick. Welcome to life. So I would accept that as a friendly amendment. Do you want to make that friendly amendment? That should the deadline get pushed past the 14th, that we revisit this, that we do not submit it until we revisit it again as a council on the 14th. Understanding that that means it's gonna be late because we have GGNRA that day, and that's probably gonna take up serious time.
And the harbor.
And the harbor, yes. August 14th is gonna be GGNRA and the harbor, like
Well, he doesn't have-
already, we're here until 10 o'clock that night, would be my guess.
well, why don't we take some other comments while he thinks about whether he wants to make a friendly amendment?
Okay, fantastic, all right,
Just give one
yes,
more comment.
Anne.
Just about, I do agree about taking out Half Moon Bay or putting it at the bottom of the list, because I do think they should submit their own. I mean, because if, especially when it's up near the top of the list, if you want to put it at the bottom of the list, it's fine, but just so we prioritize the Midcoast.
Can I respond to that?
Yes, go ahead.
Part of the reason some of these Half Moon Bay issues are in here is because they're flooding the sewer plant,
Yeah, but
and which merely is essential to life on the Midcoast. And we need to put this stuff in here in case they don't.
we could put things in
I
here
see.
about the federal government and everybody else.
Not going that far, Claire.
Claire.
I'm putting in here things, if you want to drop the Cabrillo School District stuff, fine. But, I'm putting in here things that people I've talked to elsewhere have raised and that affect us because they affect the sewer plant.
I think I'm probably, unless it's Scott, the only person here who has anything resembling any kind of bandwidth to work on this with you, unless it's you. I don't have bandwidth, I don't think. But I don't want to be in a position of working with you and everything I say, you say, yes, but we have to do it this way, we have to do it this way, which is what I'm hearing tonight. So can we, if I do work with you, we need to, or if anybody works with you, then it has to be a collaborative kind of thing.
Okay.
And I don't know how we're gonna resolve these things, because there's so, we could reorganize it, we could do that right now while we're sitting. We could say certain things go at the bottom and we could be done with it.
I think the issue was around making sure some of the language, it's more language than organization.
The language is also an issue.
Yes, so that was, yes.
I think we'll be in a much better place after we get the presentation
Yeah,
to make.
which yes, the presentation may be too late. Again, we don't know
I
until
don't-
we hear from Monticello whether the deadline's pushed back or not. Because the presentation, like, when are they gonna do that presentation? We don't have a report on the 14th.
They should have given us the presentation well ahead of time, so that we're not in this position. Listen, I've been on this council
That's
for
a
12 years,
very
and they
reasonable thing.
always push us into this position. And we do
Yes, and we don't have leverage, Dan. So we're making the best of things.
well, we have leverage by just reminding them we need more time. We can't,
Which
well,
we
this right
already
here creates.
We've
a lot
already
of
asked for an
time.
extension. So
Anyway, I think that, or help,
Mhm.
or help this presentation will kind of give us a streamline, I think, of what they're expecting or how we can help them, how they can help us help them. That's my take.
I don't think-
But
I think you
can-
can. Wait,
can I-
wait, let's Kimberly talk next, then Claire. Kimberly.
Oh, again, I don't feel comfortable submitting this big, long list. I think we can submit all these things, but we should prioritize and say, these are the things most important to us in the short term. And I'm assuming for the entire list, we're thinking long term. And for the items in green, I think we need to separate these things out and explain why they're on the list and what the level of importance is to the Midcoast, because or what the relationship is, because it doesn't make sense to me to just indiscriminately have them as this list that you in the format that you have it now.
I agree.
Could we actually sort this out if we just took piece by piece? Could we just redo this right now and have it done, or do you think that would take too much time?
I cannot sort it because I don't have the spreadsheet on this computer or spreadsheet technology. I can take notes.
Because I felt like what I said was came out too negative, because I really think we need to be all deciding which of these things are good and where we want them to be. And I don't want to just leave it with one person, because it's just because there's obviously different people's opinions. And I don't know how to make that happen.
Okay, well, if we're gonna make it happen now, then let's make it happen now.
But Greg says we can't.
How long is this gonna take though?
I mean, I can take notes.
Come
I
on.
just can't resort the list in real time.
Yeah.
Because I don't have a spreadsheet.
Okay. So one proposal would be we split it into two pieces. One is short term and one is long term.
Before that, what if we took all the green ones and put them at the end and said, these are other related things that other people are dealing with?
That
No.
we support.
Well, no, because like El Granada would be put at the bottom instead of the top, and I'm not okay with that.
El Granada what? There's a whole lot of El Granada stuff.
Well, the main one, the
Number two.
number two, where they're having flooding every single year. I mean, we've got to help people with this. This cannot go on. I mean, I feel like that really should be one of
Who
ours.
submitted that?
Burnett Silveria submitted that one, and he's given me new wording for this, but it's essentially what you're talking about. And Mary Duffy submitted item number one. The Second Street in Montero.
Okay.
that
Yeah, 'cause I
area.
think
Okay,
that's
so
already
that's,
covered.
okay, so those are our jurisdiction, so those should stay.
Yeah,
Like
like,
the Moon Ridge one's fine, put those at the bottom because it's Half Moon Bay's problem. That affects us, yes.
It's really
their
not Half Moon Bay's problem either, because it's not in Half Moon Bay.
Right, it's
Like,
unincorporated,
unincorporated.
but
Okay,
it
so it's
does-
the county's
It
problem.
does flood into the sewers.
Sure, it affects us, but it's somebody else's primary problem. We're just the collateral damage of it. So put those at the bottom. All right, so it's, okay. So are we just gonna run down this list one at a time here and decide like roughly ballpark where it goes? Because we're not, there's like too many things here to like nitpick over exactly what the ranking is.
Again, I think we should just wait for the,
Okay, we're not gonna be able to wait.
you're gonna keep us here at 12 o'clock tonight?
No, we're not till 12. We're gonna do this fast.
Well, we also have two people wanting to comment, Gary.
Yeah, okay, well, that's,
You
we'll,
want to get their comments before we do this work or after?
well, we're still having council discussion, right? I'll open it to public, fine, like, I'll open it to public comment now, and then I'm closing public comment while we. So Sid, do you want to comment now before we start arguing
Yes.
about?
I would just like to say, I know Greg didn't give us an Excel spreadsheet, but I do think this list is very random, and I would rather see it by town. So you could at least say, this is Montero, this is Moss Beach, this is El Granada, this is Half Moon Bay, and this bottom part's Moon Ridge, because otherwise you're back and forth all over the map here. And that way, I mean, even if you went down where the next to the number and wrote Half Moon Bay, Pillar Ridge is basically Moss Beach, and put down CARES program is Moss Beach, Half Moon Bay, you'd know which one once Greg goes to reorder it later, because I don't see anything that's really Moss Beach here besides Pillar Ridge. But my suggestion is to put down that they should move up the Highway 1 mobility plan. So, because if they're going to build Cypress Point, they really need to get the Highway 1 project moved up, because that area near the Montero Lighthouse and Carlos Street, where they're going to start all the construction for Cypress Point, that's going to be terrible.
That's a new item. That's not on the list.
And it's
It's
Caltrans.
not on the list is what I'm saying, but you need to put it on the list because you don't have anything for Moss Beach here. So anyway, I'm getting grouchy, but I just wanted to say that it's, the list is so random. It's here, there, and everywhere.
Well, that's what we're trying to work on.
I know. I'm just saying it's hard to look at it this way because it's not listed by town. Okay, that's all I'm saying. Bye.
Thanks, Sid. All right, Burnett.
Yeah, our group has sent you a copy explaining one of that second issue, that second item that's on there. And hopefully you've got that email and been able to read it. It's an ongoing thing that's been happening on and on and on. And the important thing is that it's dangerous. I don't think you people really understand, you know, you've seen the amount of, been up here, you've seen the flow of water and how much it can be. It's a very dangerous situation in a lot of cases, especially as you get older and stuff, with have to deal with trying to jump over, you know, this flood and water to, you know, get out of the street or walk down, you know, not even be able to walk down a sidewalk because it's being flooded. And, you know, we brought up before, I think it was Kimberly brought up and supported the fact that we don't even know how contaminated that water may be. We're being subjected to health and safety, not only safety issues, we're being potentially subjected to health issues as well from that water that's running from the from the parks. So I really think it needs to be, it's not a real expensive project. And as I've indicated in the email for the group, they've already partially addressed this. They just didn't go far enough. They only went up, you know, halfway and stopped. They didn't go up and actually address the problem up to the more populated area down Santa Maria, up to the park. So I just hope that we can keep this as a priority item and can get it resolved, because the park has, if you want to go back and listen to the park's position on this, Director yeah, thank you. At the June 6th meeting indicated that they are not going to address it. They're not going to do anything within the park, period. They've decided that they're going to let it go, the natural drainage course. And I don't know how you can call a drainage ditch that goes out at the park's entrance any kind of natural drainage course, because it's a man-made drainage ditch. But anyway, that's the position they're taking. They're not going to do a damn thing about it, period. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Closing public comment now. So structurally, shorter term items, longer term items, that a reasonable way. And then Greg will add a column for city so that can be sorted by city. We okay with that as a structure? Yes.
Yes, I think yes, but like I
Oh, what?
said, I do still think the priority should be Granada, just like we just heard. I mean, at least at the top of the list.
We're not making priorities. We're making a list.
Short term and long term is what we're doing. Like this is today is not the prioritization thing. We can put short term and long term. I think that makes sense to Kimberly's point, but there will be a different stage in the process where there's going to be the negotiating over priorities. Today, it's what things get on the list and how is the list organized. That's what today is.
Okay.
Okay.
Would the proposed organization put them at the top or near the top?
They are a short-term project.
Okay.
Okay.
Very good.
Great. Kimberly, does that address your?
Well, I'm concerned here because I know once the list goes, I mean, there is value to letting them know what our top priorities are, because if we don't, it's possible the things that are really, really important are just going to get skipped over if we don't place some emphasis on a few things.
They're not asking for emphasis. So
we will get a chance to comment on priorities.
Yes, that's a different stage in the process.
Part of the process.
But when we get that chance to comment, we're going to be commenting on a bigger pool of items, right?
Yes,
not just the items we've submitted, but a larger list of items.
Sense to like actually argue about the prioritization now, because we're going to be arguing about stuff that isn't even the full list of things that are going to need to be prioritized.
But I guess that's my question. Maybe I don't understand. So this list gets merged with other lists. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then when that merge happens, then we're going to go back and look at these merged lists and prioritize from all of them.
Yes, and prioritize all of that. That is what the county is going to do, yes. And we will have an opportunity to, they're not going to give us a list and say prioritize it for us. They're going to say, here's the combined list. We are going to run a prioritization process. What are your comments on such? And so we will, you know.
So what happens if they take this list and they look at the, you know, wildfire risk reduction, right? And that doesn't make it to, I mean, I'm just hypothetical, that doesn't make it to their priority list.
Yeah,
That's not the process they've outlined. The process they've outlined is that everything that gets submitted feeds into their prioritization. Like that everybody's projects all go in there all at once. Then then there will be this prioritization process of everything that got submitted. Like
I guess I want less competition between the things that we really need and want right away versus things that could wait. And so the more stuff you submit indiscriminately, the more likely it is that you're not gonna, you know, that takes away from the really important things that probably should have more weight.
I agree.
So there is
Sorry, Gus.
So there's a strategic choice then that has to be made. A shorter list that we believe is higher priority, or which the trade-off, if you do that, is then the county doesn't know necessarily what some of these other ideas are of things that we need fixed, versus a longer list where we're saying, here are all the things that need to get fixed, which to your point means maybe there's more quote unquote competition among ideas when the prioritization comes. So the question is, which risk is it that we want to take? And maybe that's one thing that we just do a little kind of sense of the council thing on which do you prefer the shorter list and take the risk that some of these ideas the county never knows even that we want to have them fixed? Or do you want to do the longer list and then accept that there's maybe some risk in the prioritization later in the process? Like that's shorter list or longer list is what it boils down to.
Well, for instance, what happens if what happens is these HMB things go to the top and all of these things, or Moon Ridge, for instance, and the things on the Midcoast get neglected?
Well, but again, that's a prioritization process later. Like, we will have to advocate for our stuff.
Maybe one way to look.
But that's good. We're gonna have to do that no matter what anyway. Yes,
But
Dan.
that's what I'm saying. If we're gonna have to advocate so hard for things, then why don't we want to like narrow it down right away to the things and take out things like Moon Ridge, which I don't think are important, yes, but not there. It's not in our scope.
Except that, okay, let's just do sense of the council, short list or long list sides, and and whichever one we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hopefully it's not 3, 3. Scott. All right, so Kimberly, I'm hearing short list. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, Greg.
Long list.
I'm long list.
Can you come back to me? I'm really.
Long list, Dan.
Short
list. Okay. So right now it's 3-2, long list. So what's it gonna be?
Stalemated or?
Well, this is the hard part is I understand what Greg was saying, how we're affected. But I certainly understand Kimberly's point of view that I really, really worry that the things we really want to have done may not get done, and something that.
Yeah, that's a risk either way.
You know, that
Let me ask you a hypothetical question, all right? If we put a lot of stuff on the list and they're only going to give us a few things, does it make them think, how can I put this, want to give us less or give us more if we shorten the list? To me, if we shorten the list, they're going to give us even less. If we have a longer list, I think we're going to get more consideration for more things. And frankly, I don't think this stuff is made up. I mean, there's some things that are minor compared to others, but I think we're better off negotiating wise having a longer list. That's my opinion. Does that change your vote at all?
Well, I
Well,
disagree,
we don't even know what our
I
vote is,
disagree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think as long as we can really fight for our priorities and we think we can get something, you know, then I think I would be okay with a longer list. But if it means that we're not gonna be able to fight for something and something they get, my fear is the county gets this, they get to say, oh, look at wonderful things we've done. And they do this all the time. They said, oh, we spent so much money on the Midcoast on a housing project that nobody on the Midcoast wants. Well, that, you know, sorry, that was not exactly, but you know, that the majority did not want. So this is what my fear is that they start picking things that they want to do, and it's really not our priority. It's not what we would like to see.
I think there's a high likelihood that that happens, but that has nothing to do with whether we submit a short or a long list. Like if that's gonna happen, that's gonna happen regardless of the length of our list.
I think from a perspective of being, you know, from a perspective of working with government agencies, what they're going to look at first is, you know, what are the low hanging fruit? What is the low hanging fruit? And that doesn't really get us what we need. So picking out the low hanging fruit that they're able to accomplish easily just to appease us versus actually digging into the hard things.
I'm fascinated by how unproductive we get at the end of the meetings. And how about every 5 minutes, somebody says, can't we just get this over with? And then they complain for about 5 minutes and then we're even farther behind. So what can we do?
Time to commit. Short list or long list?
Long.
Long. Or too long. Are we doing the long list now?
You want to be organized.
How are we gonna organize it? So shorter term things, like for instance, the Quarry Park stormwater thing, and then some longer term things.
I'll be glad to designate short and long term. The only other question is, when I also add the location, do I sort short and long term and within that by location?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And what is short and long term? Does that mean it's gonna take a long time to do it? Or does that mean?
There's some things in here that will not be quickly resolved, like when
almost all of them.
like when Chief Sampson told us that it was $150 million to solve the wildfire problem at Quarry Park, right? For example. But at least we're registering the fact that there is no wildfire management plan out here.
Can you tell me where there's a short term thing?
I think the El Granado one, the second.
We can run right down the list right now and classify them.
Okay, let's
Short
do
or long.
that.
So go. Yeah, and wait, before we do we agree that at that point, it's time to vote?
Yes.
Once the only thing left to do now is decide which of these things are short and long term.
What about the wording of some of these things?
So that's, we're not going.
That will get cleaned up later.
That will get cleaned up before we submit, yes.
And the obvious stuff should be removed. If it's has very low importance or a very high likelihood that it won't get acknowledged.
Well, let's do one thing at a time.
Yeah, okay. So let's run right down the list right now.
Let me start at the bottom.
Okay.
Installing a wind gauge above Quarry Park.
That's short term.
That's a short term thing.
Okay, good.
The next short term one to me.
You're keeping notes?
I'll remember this, yeah. The next short term thing is.
You'll just watch the recording.
Yeah, I'll watch the recording. The
Okay,
next
great.
short term thing is traffic controls in Montana near the school.
Wait a minute, I want to make sure I don't miss something as we go.
Yeah, how do you do this?
Yes, but one by one, don't skip.
Oh, okay, so I'm skipping 47, 46, and 45, which I think is a longer term.
Wildfire reduction, analysis, parking controls. I don't know, Montana, the parking thing near Surfers Beach might be short term.
To me, it involves Caltrans.
Yeah, as soon as you involve Caltrans, there is no chance that's a short term thing.
Okay.
Like
No, that's not true. They came out of nowhere and did that crossing at Moss Beach. They came out of nowhere and put that.
If you can, yes, of course.
This
The
is
second
including parking.
Caltrans decides to
This
do
is including
something,
parking.
sure. But unless you've got a plan for how you're gonna get Caltrans to decide to suddenly do something quickly, there's no chance that's happening quickly.
Okay, I'd say 43, 44 is short term.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, fine. I have no objections.
Could I
to-
offer something to clarify? Maybe
Yeah.
the terminology should be near term, midterm, and long term.
That's good.
That's
Near, mid, far,
Excellent.
awesome, near, mid, long, love it. Okay, great. So now
Are we
let's
writing-
go one at a time, and is
Should
it,
we write them?
is it near, mid, or
I'll listen to the
long?
recording. 47,
Wildfire trade-off analysis, what is it?
Long.
Long,
that's long.
Okay.
Wildfire risk reduction is long.
Long.
Parking and roads near surface beach,
mid,
mid.
mid,
Okay, the Montera 44 and 43 short.
short,
Sidewalks in El Granada,
Medium.
medium.
okay, mid.
Fiber optic cables, that's gotta be at least medium.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
I was actually leaning long on that, but yeah, sure, fine, medium's fine with me.
And similar to Leo's things on these towers, those are medium things. Those are not actually that long if somebody chooses to do them.
Yeah.
37 is long.
Okay,
37
what
is.
about through the Lantos Tunnel, number 40?
That should be medium.
Medium,
Remember,
okay.
it was on the list, the coastal commission
Yeah.
permit is approved,
Mhm.
and they pulled the fund.
Yes.
Okay, it's just a question of.
Yes, so
political
funding is
will.
probably medium term, yeah.
Yeah, 37 is long, 36 is, that should be short.
I would think it should be short.
Yep, short, okay.
35, well, it should be short. But somebody's got to agree to do it.
But it would be quick to do.
Right. And the three things from the Harbor District, I gotta call those at least medium, and maybe 34 is long.
32 might be long.
Yeah, I'd be more likely to leave 34 medium and put 32 as the long one.
Okay.
I'm trying to move the whole.
Hey,
I'll put it
John,
back here.
oh, wait, John, okay. Stormwater system and improved policies,
That's long.
it's medium. No, I think it's medium. That's just an assessment. That's actually not doing the work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Assessing.
Okay, fine, since it's just the assessment, I'll go.
Restoring the damage to Montera Mountain. Remember that thing that they
Uh-huh.
chopped the top off the mountain?
Right.
That could have been done a year ago. It could be short, but the problem is getting somebody to do it.
That's medium to
Yeah, all
long.
right, medium, fine.
Pilocitos dams, that's
That's long.
it's probably medium because I said PUC already has a presentation on it, but if you say long, fine.
Fine,
I have a
long.
duplicate in here, 28, 29. I gotta get rid of one of those.
Okay,
Half Moon Bay Community Pool, I don't care.
I don't really know if that should be on here. I
yeah,
guess.
Take it
yeah,
off.
yeah, I take that off.
Often day.
And what about housing for the school staff and other?
I would take that off of here.
No.
No.
Okay. Assessment of the plant, 25, that's a short-term thing. 23 and 24 are medium-term plant replacements. 22 is long-term.
Right,
21 is a medium-term. All the deficit problems, the financial problems, those are probably long-term.
yeah, those got.
Wastewater testing, short-term.
Mhm.
Claire, you tell me what's coastside urgent care for
Medium.
medium.
Okay,
The CARES program funding we asked for a long time
We
ago.
already have it, don't we?
No, they
They
discontinued.
never.
They stopped it?
Yeah.
How did that happen? I didn't.
So
The
I view
county
that as, I
stopped
view
it.
that as a short-term political will funding decision. It's not a hard thing to do. but
Yeah, but
stop-
short term, short term.
Yeah,
stopped
but
the CARES
stopped,
program?
they stopped.
Is-
Yeah, isn't that wait a minute, that's the one where they go out, yeah, on the mental health, yes, they stopped it.
Okay, this
Care-
watershed, this watershed
Yeah.
preservation thing from
I'm pretty sure
MWSD
it's no longer
is the
funded.
Martini Creek bypass. It's a transferring of the land. Yeah, I mean, it could be done short-term, but it won't be.
Right.
Because it's a jurisdictional issue.
Mm.
But it's not a hard thing. It's mostly transferring to Montera the ability to take care of that watershed, fix the fire danger, build a park, drill some wells. So call it medium term.
Sure.
Yeah.
The Pillar Ridge thing, I'm tempted to call that Short Ridge because it's already been on the MWSD agendas, but it isn't funded.
Okay, short term then.
Medium or fun? Sure. What do you want?
Medium or short, I don't
I'd
know.
put medium, because if it's not
Medium? Yeah.
funded,
Wet weather storage for Half Moon Bay, that's.
I'd take that
There's
off.
already a design. Well, no, that's part of the flooding at Sand. So that's why it's on here.
But, yeah,
And it's already a design concept, but it's certainly medium. It's not, I don't think it's
Right.
long-term.
right?
The
Fine,
stormwater
medium,
systems
fine.
policy. This is their problem. It's at least medium
If it's their problem, does it need to be on our list?
because it floods the fucking plant.
Okay, fine, fine, fine.
As far as the daycare center and the community center, we've been talked about those.
They're two separate things.
I know, I
Yeah.
put them down as separate.
Well, I know, but the community center we can see is. Well, the GCSD is called out here, and so we'd have to apparently adapt to whatever they're doing. But it is a government thing. The childcare center is a private thing.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what difference that makes, but it seems like it probably does make some difference in terms of county.
Well, I understood there was a charter issue, the
Yeah.
GCSD didn't charter to do the daycare.
Their
And-
general manager said that under Parks powers, they're not allowed to have daycare.
That, right, but why is daycare on this list?
Yes,
Yeah, take it off.
Yeah, I don't think it's.
Priority.
It's a priority.
Yeah, but it's not.
We've heard it.
Well,
Times.
wait,
But
we
it's
might
not-
need another gas station
Right.
in
It's
Montero.
not an infrastructure.
It's not an.
Kimberly's got it.
I think
Like,
having
that's a-
daycare for
that's a
people to be able to go to work and leave their kids and take care of
Yeah,
it.
but
That
that's
is.
Kimberly's got
It's
it.
not physical infrastructure. I know, I'm gonna call her in a second then. Yeah, but that's not like
It-
like that's like a
it's
service.
It's a building with a service.
It doesn't even have to be a building.
Oh, it could be people's homes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well,
that's
I
good.
view it as an infrastructure issue. I'm sorry, I've read too many articles, I guess.
Am I-
Yeah, I would view that as a social service, not infrastructure the way I think this crisping is intended to be.
Well, the community center also is infrastructure, right?
Yeah, well, I don't even know why that's, I mean, GPSD's gonna build their thing, like, I don't know why that's.
So that's my question for 6 and 7. What are we asking for? I mean, I see this amount, 5,000 and 2,000. What are we asking?
It's 5 million and 2 million. That's just the cost.
Oh.
It's not clear that any
Oh, it's
money-
in millions. Okay, so what exactly are we asking? Are we asking them to build a center? I don't understand the ask.
The ask would be to consider funding the community priority, as for instance, Sid has asked for years.
I think it has to be more specific, though. Are we asking them to actually build a building? What, I mean,
we're not asking them to give GCSD money, although maybe they would accept it if it was offered, but that's not
I would
appropriate.
take those both off.
Yeah.
Yeah, take it off because I don't think it should be in a flood zone. That's in the tsunami zone there.
Okay, 5 is probably a duplicate of another one I have down on the list. We
Yeah.
already talked about.
Right. Okay, so we get rid
Moon
of that.
Ridge looks like it has a duplicate. And then the top two are,
El Granada's
Short-term.
short-term.
yeah, well, all three of the stormwater things could be
Yeah.
short term. If
Okay.
somebody would just get an engineer out there,
Yes.
design and build something.
I agree, and that should be.
Okay, so that was better organized.
Okay,
Okay,
so I will watch the video.
Yes.
Okay, and I will designate short, medium, or long term,
Mhm.
and I will put the cities on it.
Mhm.
The primary sort is by
Primary
term.
sort is by term, and the
Duration.
secondary sort
Is
is
by
city.
location.
Yeah.
Okay,
And Greg, please, there's nothing on there about the emergency evacuation for the Midcoast, and there's nothing there about the circulation for the new Mid-Penn Cypress Point.
yeah,
For-
I take a
That's
note.
important.
The evacuation here, I'm glad you brought that up.
Thank you.
Should I be adding in at least an assessment of evacuation plans, or what should we be putting in here?
Sure, an assessment of evacuation plan.
Evacuation capability.
Yeah.
And then as far as the traffic on near Carlos, what did you call that? The safety and mobility study, Sid? I
Yeah.
think we should word that as something else like.
It's called the Moss Beach Corridor project.
Traffic accommodations or traffic adaptation.
Well, I think the point was like Caltrans has a project already
It's
scheduled.
called the Moss Beach Corridor project, but it's not going to be completed until 2030. And the
All right.
Moon
Something the county can
Cypress
do.
Point is going to go under construction way before that.
All
So
right,
they
so
need
I will research what the plan number is
Mhm.
and put that specific project in here.
Okay.
And that, frankly, I hate to say this, but that's a long-term thing, right?
Yeah, it's a long-term thing. Caltrans isn't good. Like Caltrans, it's not, the county can't make Caltrans do anything.
The evacuation assessment, though, would be short, medium? Oh.
Short.
Short, okay,
Put it short, just,
Okay.
it's just an assessment.
I know.
Those take a year and a half.
That's short enough. That is short.
That's
Yes,
short,
yes.
This is government, so that counts as short.
All right, so I will make those changes, and who's gonna review this?
I'll help you if you want.
Well,
I need you to work on other things.
If you're not gonna do it, then I'll do it.
Yeah, what, because she and I also have to work on the Harbor District, thing. That's at the next meeting.
All right. So do you want me to handle it then?
It doesn't really matter.
I mean, if you're okay handling it, then great, because I would rather not. But I will do it if you're already working on the other thing.
I'm already working on like 5 things.
Okay, I'll do it. I'll do it.
Okay, so with that discussion.
Yeah.
Are we going to vote, or do we have to call that an amendment, or is that just an understanding of the council?
So I propose the amended resolution is that we're empowering Greg and I to edit this list into the near, mid, and long-term priorities organized by city with some edited language of the individual projects to be submitted on Friday, unless the deadline is pushed beyond August 14th, in which case we will bring that new amended document back here on the 14th to do after GGNRA and Harbor project. So we will all just bring coffee or whatever it is. It's a
Is that a motion for an amendment?
Yeah, I just proposed that as
I
a new
second that amendment.
Great.
And we have to vote on the
Okay, and
amendment.
then we have to have discussion. Is there any discussion?
No.
No?
Kimberly?
Comment from the public on our amendment thing?
Did Marisol say she was gonna have the DEM people come and give you a presentation before you had to?
No, she said, what she said is they are willing to at some point come and give us a presentation. There was no discussion of any deadline. And we asked for an extension to submit our information, which we will not know if we get until the earliest tomorrow. So the vote has to happen tonight. Okay.
Yeah,
Unless we're still in the room.
What?
Unless we're still here tomorrow.
No, we are finishing this meeting in the next 5 minutes, people. Focus. All right. So closing public comment. Then Kimberly, will you please take the roll?
Greg?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Scott's not here. Dan?
Yes.
Anne?
Yes.
Claire?
Yes.
Gus?
Yes.
And Kimberly? I'm sorry, I'm gonna abstain.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing, and Gus, I will work on this tomorrow afternoon.
Great.
And by tomorrow night, you will have a draft.
Awesome. And I will look at it. It'll be very late tomorrow night. Great. Okay, so can I just in 30 seconds just tell you I met with Ray the other day.
Met who?
Ray.
Our supervisor.
Okay, met with Ray.
Yes, met with Ray. You'll notice the MOU about our funding was not in the consent agenda today.
Oh, no.
That is because the county executive's office has decided to rework it. So we should have just voted on it last.
Well,
with
we
the
had
Pescadero.
Porcitas in there, we had
I
to fix
know,
it.
I know.
So what is the
But-
problem?
I don't know. Ray didn't know what the problem was either. And he said, all I can say is I'm really, really sorry. I don't know why, but it's being reworked again, and we will let you know as soon as we know what the reworked thing is.
Did we get our $3,000?
I don't think so, because the thing's being reworked.
Did you see what they did to Porcitas? I mean, to
Yes,
Pescadero?
reduced it to 5, yes.
But last, just without any conversation, just they planned to reduce it to 7,
Mhm.
and then they said, screw it, we're going down to 5.
Well, I guess that is what it is. And then on the healthcare side, he said they looked in the contracts, and the contracts specify that it'd be urgent care, but if that's not what it is, I guess that's not what it is. But anyway, that was
Did he say
it.
anything about Cypress Point and the?
No, didn't say anything about we didn't talk about Cypress Point.
You were supposed to.
Was I?
You asked for my input and I said so.
Oh, fuck. Sorry.
Yes, well, put it for next time, please.
Okay. Hold please.
Well, the fact is it may end up being urgent care, but at this point it's not.
Okay, well. He said, he said, I looked in the contracts and it says urgent care. That was what we paid for. So, you know, hopefully that is in fact eventually what occurs. All right, that's all I got. Anybody else, any council activity? No? Okay, so the one other thing we do have to discuss for a second about, can we move on to future agendas? Great, is that next time we will have.
Crystalline's got her hand up.
Oh, Crystalline. Yes, Crystalline.
No.
I just wanted to clarify that PMAC did discuss and did agree to 5.
Okay.
Some people say they did and some people say they didn't.
Yeah,
So
that's
They
interesting.
absolutely did.
and some people don't think so.
Good, thanks, Crystal.
Okay. Okay, so GGNRA will be here next time. There has been a request from the public that we be in a larger room than this on the grounds that there may be lots more people who want to come. Now, I feel like we may have a lot of people come into Zoom. I'm not so sure we're gonna have so many people physically here that we can't accommodate. But yes, Dan.
Can I ask? What did GGNRA say that they were gonna come here for?
To give us an update on their plans.
Just an update,
Mm-hmm.
okay?
They wanted.
So it's in the middle of a process, it's not like some final, like pivotal.
I mean, it's
a
a
good
government
question.
project.
He's asking a question.
good
What, I don't know if you read the same emails I did, but we had people express concern that this was GNRA trying to use us in lieu of a public meeting that they're supposed to hold. And that was the concern, and that it should be, I guess we got an email to this effect, right? It should be held in a large enough auditorium and be an official public meeting, and we should devote a whole meeting to it. And, but
Okay, so yeah, on that point, it is not our job to be GGNRA. Right. I'm happy to allow them to come and speak, but if they are not doing their process and not holding public meetings they're supposed to have, like that's. I mean, everybody should be, they should take the flack that they're gonna take for that, but that's not our. It's not appropriate for us to like try to be them.
There's reflecting the concern that is expressed.
Yes, no, I completely agree. I got that email too, yes, Dave.
So you basically saying, should we accommodate it?
It's
What's with the echo?
Then Claire, yes.
I think the first step to take is to,
It wasn't me.
clearly ask, GGNRA, what. A little bit more than just saying an update. We have to know what, a little bit more information about the update. What are their expectations?
Expectations about what?
What do they hope to accomplish at the meeting?
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go, thank you.
Okay. Sure, I will send the.
Because we need to, we're not. I honestly, I don't know, it could be. I had to take a wild guess,
Okay.
20 people coming. I mean, we can fit them in here, but.
Yeah, we can fit 20
I
people.
don't know, I wouldn't take more than that.
Okay, but so do you want me to ask Ray if we can use his office that night? You want to just do our meeting that night over in the harbor, in Ray's office? That was what I wanted to ask you guys. Like,
Well, the acoustics is horrible, so anybody on Zoom is not gonna hear what happens. I've participated on Zoom and in person. In person is okay, but if you're on Zoom, you can't hear a thing. It just echoes. It's horrible.
Based on the answers to the questions, it's really gonna determine whether, should they be holding their own meeting to the community? Or should we be hosting? I'm sure that they'd love to have us just host.
And then of course, I don't know why this is, I don't know why.
Okay.
Guys, I'm not on mute. Did GGNRA request to come?
Yes.
Okay, so basically I don't mean this to be as loaded as it sounds, but basically the equestrian people who I support are kind of ambushing. And then saying whatever meeting you just had wasn't valid because it wasn't your meeting, it was the MCC's meeting. And I'm not sure we should be part of that. I think we should accommodate GGNRA since they're the ones that asked to come. And I think we should certainly accommodate the equestrian people who would like to come either online or in person, but I don't think we should redo our.
Yes,
formats.
I also agree with that. I don't think we should change our process, but since that request came, I didn't want to just unilaterally make a decision about that. I wanted to talk with you guys about it. Yes, Greg.
I just want to make sure you're all aware of the backstory that Montero Water and Sanitary District wrote a very strongly worded letter to the GGRNA folks, feeling that what they were doing was rushed, inappropriate, not fully scoped out. MWSD has its own problems. GGNRA is what I'm saying. So it's just part of the backstory of this.
Okay. All right. Well, my lean would be to just run our normal process. And it's anyone who comes will be allowed to speak. Anyone in the Zoom will be allowed to speak. But everyone who wants to make a public comment, make a public comment.
But what the purpose is, because have
Okay,
they,
sure.
have they produced an updated plan? I don't know that they have.
Yeah, we should have that stuff ahead of time.
Yeah, on the website, I agree.
Yes,
Yeah. Okay, well, so what they want to present.
for a significant amount of time. So that this is probably, I don't know, depending on how big it is, the bigger it is, the more time we should have to digest and go through it.
And our policy is to encourage remote attendance.
I don't know about that.
I agree.
What?
Speaking as a recent COVID survivor.
What's our policy? I never voted for that.
It's on our agenda. It always says we encourage.
It does say that.
Well, I didn't write it. I
did.
never said yes on it. I mean, I think it's up to the community member.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who comes is welcome to come, but yeah, it just says in the little notes, prefer it if you remotely come in. Okay, so so the consensus is we're just gonna run the normal process. So GGNR will be first on the agenda and Harbor will be second on the agenda. Anybody else got anything else?
We will know later whether we have a late night session on Chris.
Yes, we will know that later. But that was part of our motion, so that's all covered. Anything else? Okay, so we done tonight?
I move, we adjourn.
Okay, I second. Did we inject? Nope, acclamation, awesome, great, thanks guys, Kimberly, thanks for hanging in there, I know it's late.
Chat is saved.
Thanks.
Yep,
And I'm ending the meeting.
all right.